Chapter 37:55. Thinking of this, Xiaohua shook his head slightly. After all, his current strength was already comparable to the upper fifth grade of essence energy. Moreover, he was currently in the great formation set up by the tribulation passing cultivator Sanglangzi. Although the power of this misty mountain maze formation was extremely great, even if it was 10 times or 100 times stronger, it still couldn't compare to the 3 great formations Xiaohua encountered before. That kind of formation was definitely not something that could be done by humans. Moreover, if the Dawn Rain continent and the 3 continents were not on the same plane, it would be easier for Xiaohua to return to the Dawn Rain continent. However, if the Dawn Rain continent and the 3 continents were separated by humans, no matter if it was Tao sect cultivators, Confucian cultivators, or Buddhist disciples, they couldn't find or break these 3 great formations. Moreover, the 3 great formations had already been submerged in the dust of time. With Xiaohua's cultivation, how could he find them again? Therefore, Xiaohua very naturally chose the former possibility. He even consoled himself with a bitter smile. How could there be a cultivator in this world who could set up such a large formation? Not to mention tribulation passing, even a Mahayana cultivator. Speaking of this, Xiaohua was dumbfounded again. These words were definitely self-deceiving. Because the 3 continents and the Dawn Rain continent indeed didn't have cultivators who could set up such a large formation. But what about outside the 3 continents and the Dawn Rain continent? What about outside this so-called cultivation world? Xiaohua didn't dare to imagine. Heavens! Xiaohua grabbed his hair and said with a bitter smile, I just want to live on the hidden Immortal continent and find my home. That's right! After being distressed, Xiaohua's eyes suddenly lit up. If the Dawn Rain continent and the 3 continents are on the same plane, then wouldn't it be more likely that my home is on the hidden Immortal continent? That is to say, as long as I find my home, I can also find the way to the Dawn Rain continent. It seems that once this matter is over, I'll hurry back to the Black Cloud Ridge and help the Jiang country's princess establish a country. Then I'll leave the country's affairs to Xiongyi and Li Xiang. I'll bring some disciples to find Lu Jun. Now that he had a clue about his home, Xiaohua's mood was very good. He threw the matter that had nothing to do with him to the back of his mind, and his gaze once again fell on the grid where the jade bottle was placed. There were restrictions on these lattices, but what made Xiaohua happy was that the lattices were simple restrictions in order to protect the jade bottles and the pills inside. Although these restrictions were unfamiliar to Xiaohua, they were nothing in Xiaohua's eyes. Xiaohua easily broke these restrictions, then he took all the jade bottles and stored them inside the space. Then, Xiaohua took out the ink cloud pupil and placed it on his forehead. After looking at it for a moment, he waved his hand and took out a jade bottle. The words, Vitality Pill, were written on top of the jade bottle. However, his handwriting was very sloppy. It could be seen that Sung Langzi wrote it casually. This Vitality Pill is in Senior Sung Langzi's ink cloud pupil. It's a pill used by spirit-severing cultivators to repair their spiritual sense. However, I don't know if the spirit-severing cultivators in Senior Tsang Langzi's eyes are the same as the ones in the Dawn Rain continent. Xiaohua was a bit hesitant, but after a moment, Xiaohua felt relieved. This Zhao's spiritual sense has been tempered by the rockfall matrix, and now it has far surpassed the nascent soul stage. It has even surpassed the spirit-severing stage in the Dawn Rain continent. Even if this pill is not suitable, this Xiao has a secret technique to guard against it. This Xiao can use the jade blood pill core to repair my spiritual sense, but it consumes a lot of magic power. It's not suitable. Thinking about this, Xiaohua activated his spiritual sense secret technique and swallowed the vitality pill. Boom! This really made Xiaohua overjoyed. Although this pill had been stored for thousands of years, it did not lose its effect under the restriction. The medicinal power dissolved, and immediately, an indescribable flow rushed into his Naiwen palace. This feeling was very similar to the jade blood pill core. Good. Xiaohua felt his spiritual sense slowly recover and praised. Senior Tsang-Lungzi's alchemy technique is really marvelous. In a moment, I still have to see if Mo Yutong was left behind in the cave. After swallowing the vitality pill, Xiaohua put the other jade bottles into his space and carefully stored them away. There were too many gains from the Misty Mountain maze, and he needed time to properly organize them. As for the current green-robed Xiaohua, not only did he need to refine his spiritual tool, he also needed to comprehend the 5 elements escape technique. Where would he have the extra time? With the gains, Xiaohua's heart relaxed, and he turned to look at the other places in the alchemy room. Since it was an alchemy room, there was naturally an earth fire and alchemy room. However, in the middle of the alchemy room, the earth fire was completely extinguished, and there was no flame. Not to mention, there was no alchemy furnace above the earth fire. And the precious pills and alchemy furnace must be used by Senior Tsang-Lungzi himself, and he must have taken them away. Xiaohua nodded inwardly. He then looked at the cave entrance that was connected to the pill room. That cave entrance's restriction actually blocked even his soul sense. Clearly, it was very important. Xiaohua already understood what that place was. Outside this cave entrance is a medicinal garden. Xiaohua checked again to make sure he didn't miss anything in the alchemy room, and then walked to the entrance of the cave. The restriction that blocked his spiritual sense didn't stop Xiaohua's figure, and when he stepped into the cave, his heart filled with anticipation was once again satisfied. It wasn't beyond his expectations. The herb garden in Tsang-Lungzi's cave was also inside the array, and the space inside the array seemed to be several hundred li wide. What surprised Xiaohua the most was that the heaven-earth yuan qi inside this space was especially abundant, far surpassing that of the outside of the cave. Spirit Gathering Array? The name of this array suddenly appeared in Xiaohua's mind, and then the array also appeared in Xiaohua's mind, but when Xiaohua released his spiritual sense and looked at the space, he slightly shook his head. This seems to be similar to a spirit gathering array, but not quite the same. Unfortunately, there isn't any array jade slip here, otherwise this Xiaohua would be able to comprehend it. Even if there isn't one here, who knows if there isn't one in another place? I don't know if this little guy Fu Jiwen has such an opportunity. Yes, Tsang-Lungzi was a master of arrays, and Xiaohua didn't believe that he didn't leave some array jade slips in his cave. Unfortunately, although this herb garden is very big, most of the spiritual herbs in the herb garden have already been taken away by Senior Tsang-Lungzi, leaving less than 10% behind. Xiaohua's spiritual sense swept over and saw clearly, and then he bitterly smiled. These spiritual herbs may be rare in the eyes of others, but in this Xiaohua's eyes, they aren't anything. What is this? Just as Xiaohua was feeling disappointed, his spiritual sense fell on a very distant corner, and his body trembled slightly, and then he hurriedly flew towards that corner of the herb garden. After flying for a while, Xiaohua seemed to have thought of something, and with a wave of his hand, he released Xiaogue and Little Silver, and ordered them to help him take away all the spiritual herbs in the herb garden, and then he quickly flew to that corner. When Xiaohua landed in that corner, he felt a completely different coldness and an indescribable smell of blood. Xiaohua muttered thoughtfully, "So that's how it is. But inside this restriction, inside the yellow spring water, what is it?" Xiaohua's gaze fell on a deep pit that was several zhang in size, and there was a layer of extremely tough restriction above it. The deep pit was filled with the yellow spring water that Xiaohua had seen outside the Cloud Mountain Maze formation, and in the yellow spring water, there was a thumb-thick, dark green tree. That small tree was several feet in size, like a coral, and had branches several feet in size. The branches were covered with the same dark green leaves, and the leaves were several inches in size, uneven, and covered with veined patterns. Those patterns were very strange, but in Xiaohua's eyes, they were somewhat familiar, but he couldn't immediately remember where he had seen them. Looking at the top of each branch of the small tree, there was a jade fruit smaller than the belly of a little finger. The jade fruit was also covered with veined patterns, and it was somewhat similar to the leaves, but there was a faint golden connection between these veined patterns. "This must be the most precious thing in the entire medicinal garden," Seeing the appearance of the small tree, Xiaohua immediately thought to himself, "But I don't know why Senior Chenglongzi didn't take it away." Of course, when Xiaohua's gaze fell on the yellow spring water, he suddenly understood. It wasn't that Chenglongzi didn't want to take it away, but that he couldn't. This thing could only be planted in the yellow spring water, and the yellow spring water could only be found in this cave. Even if Chenglongzi took it away, he couldn't plant it without the yellow spring water. That's not right, Xiaohua thought to himself. The yellow spring's water in the outer layer of the yellow spring's array is obviously rootless. I reckon that Senior Chenglongzi must have obtained it from somewhere. Since he was able to move the yellow spring's water here, he can naturally move it away. It's not impossible for him to take this small tree with him. Or maybe Senior Chenglongzi just casually planted it back then. Don't you think this thing can survive? Motherfucker, have I gone mad? I don't care whether the Xiaoyu continent and the hidden Immortal continent are together or not. I don't care why he left this small tree behind, I just need to put this small tree into my space. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and threw away these indifferent thoughts. He patted his forehead and opened his delirium breaker Dharma eye. Hiss! But when he saw the restriction in front of him, and the situation inside the restriction, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. In his delirium breaker Dharma eye, the restriction that was several feet in size was abnormally complex. Strands of brilliance intertwined together, and it was unknown how many times stronger than the restriction in the outer layer of the cave. Moreover, in this rainbow-colored barrier, in the middle of a pool of blood red, the shape of a dark green tree was especially dazzling, like a star. Heavenly pattern land deed! Xiaohua closed his Dharma eye, and immediately thought of the patterns on the leaves and fruits of the small tree. They were actually extremely similar to the heavenly pattern land deed on the mysterious dark cloud. These leaves are somewhat similar to the twilight moon, Xiaohua suddenly realized. Could it be that this thing has something to do with soul cultivators? Damn it, Senior Chenglongzi, who the hell is he? Why are there so many mysterious things in the cave? -13. Chapter 3756. Fellow Taoist Soul Cultivator, where are you? Where is Little White? Since the item was related to soul cultivators, Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly summoned Xiaohua and Little White. Soul cultivator Xiaohua was the first to fly out. If fellow Taoist doesn't know about it, then I don't know about it either. Furthermore, this item is blocked by a seal, so I can't sense if it has anything to do with me. It's fine. Xiaohua looked at Soul Cultivator Xiaohua, who was standing there with soul strands wrapped around his body. Xiaohua was very happy. He knew that Soul Cultivator Xiaohua had comprehended the green seal text in the mysterious dark clouds. He smiled and replied, "You and I are one. I called you out mainly because of Little White. Fellow Taoist, you summoned me at the right time." Soul Cultivator Xiaohua smiled. Little White has been sleeping in the spirit sky for a long time. It has just woken up, but it seems to have something on its mind. Suddenly, a dragon's roar erupted from Xiaohua's forehead, and a meter-long dragon flew out. As soon as it landed, it transformed into Xiaohua, who hovered next to Xiaohua. From the look of it, Xiaohua was even more majestic than the Soul Cultivator himself. "Ha, Xiaohua, I was just about to look for you," Little White said with a smile. It didn't look like the Soul Cultivator Xiaohua described it to be. "I remember some things about the past. Oh, and some random things. A few days ago, I was wondering if I should give them to you, but now I've made up my mind. As long as you want them, I'll give them to you." "What are they?" Xiaohua asked with interest. "Why are they making things so difficult for you?" "Of course they're things I know. Although my memories were sealed by others, they were somewhat loose. Now I've found them. I'm not from Yellow Flower Ridge, but the 10,000 Demon Realm," Little White said with a smile. "Ah? 10,000 Demon Realm?" Xiaohua exclaimed. "Yes, that's right. If you want them, I can give them to you right now." Little White didn't hide anything. Xiaohua thought for a moment, then nodded. Okay, thank you. Hee, why are you being so polite with me? Little White laughed mischievously, opened its mouth, and spat out a thumb-sized crystal thread, which fell between Xiaohua's eyebrows. Boom! Xiaohua's mind felt as if it had been struck by a hammer. His vision almost went black, and then countless things fell into his mind. Little White! Can't you be a little slower? Xiaohua almost vomited blood. Just as he was about to complain, he suddenly exclaimed, What? Your Highness is… However, before he could finish his sentence, another wave-like thing rushed in and interrupted him. Xiaohua hastily closed his eyes, calmly absorbing the memories that Little White sent over. After the time it took to eat a meal, Xiaohua opened his eyes, looked at the complacent Little White, and said with a bitter smile, There are too many things too complicated. How the dragon race and the monster race mate. You don't need to let me know, right? I'm letting you know anyway, so there's no need for me to hold anything back. Little White smiled and said, Besides, it's too troublesome to remove all these things. All right. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Little White sent over too many things, more than what Huangyi gave him back then. He didn't know how long it would take to receive them. Now that these things were temporarily placed somewhere, he could only pick up the things he wanted to take a look. So your Highness is the monster race of the Thousand Monster Realm, called Xianhuan, Monster King Mo Sa's beloved concubine. Xiaohua sighed. How did you know? Did you peek at your Highness? Don't talk nonsense. Mentioning your Highness, Little White's face tightened. Your Highness seems to be related to the monster that sealed me. That monster's abilities are incomparable. He might be able to hear your words. All right. Xiaohua nodded. He didn't tell Little White about Dyer's situation, so Little White didn't know that your Highness was abnormal. Little White didn't even know that Xiaohua had met your Highness. All right, I've given you everything. I'm also relaxed. Little White smiled and said, I'd better go back and rest. I'll just wait for you to cast my body. Don't worry. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, I called you out because I want you to help me see what this is. Saying that, Xiaohua used his finger to point at the small tree behind Little White. What is it? Little White was also puzzled, because it came out of the mysterious cloud. It didn't sense anything abnormal, but when it saw the small tree inside the seal, its body couldn't help but tremble, even its human form collapsed, and it turned into its dragon form and pounced towards the seal. Rumble. Thunderbolts appeared one after another, forcing Little White to shrink back. That dragon form circled around the seal, as if it was abnormally excited. Seeing Little White like this, Xiaohua was also shocked. He had never seen Little White like this before. What is this? Xiaohua hurriedly asked. Is it very precious? What is it? Damn it! Xiaohua, how can your luck be so good? Little White's voice was abnormally excited. How many fruits are there first? It seems. Separated by the seal, Xiaohua's divine sense couldn't probe, so he frowned and said, 365. What about the leaves? There are 9 leaves on each branch, and at the top of each branch is a fruit. What do you think? Xiaohua's heart moved, and he said, Unfortunately. Little White suddenly sighed again, not answering the question. What's wrong? What is this thing? Xiaohua's curiosity was greatly aroused. Little White withdrew its dragon form and turned back into Xiaohua's form, pointing its finger and said, This thing is called the underworld fruit. Oh, don't ask me why I know. I don't know why I know. Underworld fruit? Xiaohua originally thought that this rare thing would have an extremely shocking name, but he didn't expect the name to be so ordinary, and couldn't help but frown. Seeing Xiaohua frown like this, how could Little White not know what Xiaohua was thinking? It said disdainfully, Don't look down on this thing just because the name of this underworld fruit is unusual. Can something named after a world be simple? Oh? This underworld fruit is very rare? Xiaohua still didn't understand. What's the use of this thing? The underworld fruit is naturally not rare in the underworld. It is said that it is everywhere. Little White said with a smile. But outside the underworld, of course it is rare. Xiaohua was disappointed, shaking his head, and said, "Since it is so, what is there to be surprised about? The underworld fruit is everywhere, we have no use for it." "If you think so, you are wrong," Little White explained. "Although this thing is everywhere in the underworld fruit, for this underworld fruit to grow for 10 million years, that is also rare." "How do you know this thing has grown for 10 million years?" Xiaohua looked pensive. "The underworld fruit is originally a stem, and it forms after 1 million years. According to the quality, the number of branches is different, or a few, or 100, or 1,000, and the size of the underworld fruit is also different. No matter the size of the tree and the number of branches, after 1 million years, a fruit will grow at the top of each branch, and then every 1 million years, a leaf will grow on each branch, and when each branch grows 10 leaves, the underworld fruit is considered ripe." "See, so it is like that." Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air, finally understanding the preciousness of this little tree. "Also, once the underworld fruit is planted, it cannot be moved. If it is moved, all the branches, leaves, and fruits will fall, and the entire underworld fruit will turn into a stem." "Damn it, I was wondering," Xiaohua cursed. "No wonder Senior Tseng Lungzi left it here." "San Lungzi?" Little White was slightly stunned, looking left and right. "Who is this person?" "Oh, let's talk about this later." Xiaohua looked at the underworld fruit regretfully and said, "Let's talk about this underworld fruit first. In other words, although this thing has grown for 10 million years, it is still not ripe?" "Yes. It is definitely not ripe." Little White shrugged, exactly the same as Xiaohua. "What a pity!" Xiaohua was helpless. "I saw that the underworld fruit's fruit and leaves had a heaven pattern earth deed, and thought that it would be useful for you and soul cultivators. Looks like we still have to wait 1 million years. I just don't know what a ripe underworld fruit can do." "Who said it can't be used?" Little White asked curiously. "You said it?" Xiaohua was stunned. "Didn't you say it was a pity just now?" "Damn it, I said it was a pity because the underworld fruit is not ripe." Little White laughed. "The underworld fruit needs 12 million years to mature. Even in the underworld, it is extremely rare. Especially this kind of underworld fruit that contains the number of stars in the sky. It is extremely good quality. Who knows what effect this underworld fruit will have when it matures? In the future, don't hesitate when you speak, say it all in one breath." Xiaohua laughed. Little White ignored him, looking at the soul cultivator Xiaohua at the side, and said, "As for the unripe underworld fruit, its fruit and leaves are extremely useful for the soul. As for what use it is, don't ask me, I also don't know. Of course, just by looking at the heaven pattern earth deed on the leaves, it is 100 times stronger than the daybreak moon you used before, not to mention that the leaves have grown for 1 million years, and the fruit has grown for 10 million years. How do I pick the leaves, fruits, and roots?" Xiaohua suddenly asked. "Just wrap them with soul strands." Little White hurriedly said, "Don't use your hands, and also don't use anything else. The underworld fruit is an item of the underworld. It cannot be contaminated with anything with life. Since it is an item of the underworld, how can it be useful for the soul?" Xiaohua was a bit confused. "The soul is the most mysterious thing in the world." Little White laughed. "Now that I am a soul body, I am the most sensitive to this. At the same time, the soul is also the thing that connects the underworld to the other realms. Of course, the underworld fruit is useful for the soul? As for what use it is, I also don't know." "Do you need it?" Xiaohua asked. "Me?" Little White shook his head. "I have already merged with the fire dragon's soul. My soul is quite solid. I only need a dragon body to be reborn. I don't need this item. Moreover, this underworld fruit has 365 fruits. Each fruit has 9 leaves. It contains heavenly principles. The soul cultivator Xiaohua needs to use it. There are endless mysteries. He cannot lack one. If you break the seal and take the underworld fruit, immediately send it into the mysterious dark cloud. I just need to smell it a bit." -13. Chapter 3757. Alas, although this thing is good, how do I collect it? Xiaohua frowned and looked at the restriction with a troubled expression. Haha, that's not something I need to worry about. Xiaobai laughed. Now that I've recovered some of my memories, it's already good that I can tell you this. If it was before, I wouldn't even know about this. You can think about how to break the restriction yourself. I'll go back with Soul Cultivator Xiaohua first. Fellow Soul Cultivator, don't worry. I'll send Xiaobai back first. Xiaohua waved his hand. I'll have to borrow your strength later. No problem. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua didn't say anything, but he knew that if he got the underworld fruit, he would be the most direct beneficiary, so he replied with a smile. Xiaohua used his soul thread to send Xiaobai back. Now that his soul thread was strong and tenacious, sending Xiaobai back was as easy as turning over his hand. Pinching his chin, Xiaohua looked at the restriction above the yellow springs and frowned. He didn't have much magic power left in his body. Even if he used up all of it, he would only be able to use half of the spiritual fire. But looking at the restriction situation, relying on the spiritual fire alone wouldn't be of any help. He could only attack from different angles. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua opened his delusion breaker eyes and looked at the entire restriction carefully. Finally, he closed his eyes. The light above the restriction seemed to be engraved in his mind. This restriction is very strange. It looks like a single restriction, but it's actually made up of hundreds of small restrictions. These small restrictions complement each other. If you only attack one restriction, the other restrictions will work together to defend. Attacking one restriction is not much different from attacking the entire restriction. But if you attack the entire restriction, the power of the attack will be scattered. Senior Tsung Longzi, your restriction is really marvelous. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. You don't want others to break this restriction. Could it be that you want to keep this underworld fruit for yourself? It seems like that's the only way. After the time it took to eat a meal, Xiaohua opened his eyes and smiled confidently. However, it seems like I'll have to borrow Fu Jiwen's Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal again. Isn't this the legendary borrowing power to fight strength? Fu Jiwen, this Xiao's disciple, is really useful. Fu Jiwen. Smiling, Xiaohua raised his head to send a telepathic message to Fu Jiwen. However, after shouting twice, Xiaohua came back to his senses. There was a restriction in Tseng Lungzi's cave, so his voice transmission might not be heard by Fu Jiwen. Let's make preparations first. Xiaohua clapped his hands and hundreds of jade talismans flew into the air. However, just as he was about to make his move, he hesitated. Although this constellation star formation is the most complete innate divine restriction that I have comprehended, it is the best defensive formation. However, when it comes to breaking formations, it's just passable. Green-robed fellow Taoist. Xiaohua pondered as he summoned green-robed Xiaohua. He asked, What do you think? In terms of defense, if our constellation star formation claims to be second, no other formation would dare to claim to be first. The green-robed Xiaohua controlled his formless nascent soul to appear. He shook his head and explained. But if it's used for breaking restrictions and attacking, it's far inferior to the Pleiades devil-devouring immortal formation and the golden crow immortal slaying demon formation. But we haven't comprehended enough of the other divine restrictions, Xiaohua said regretfully. They say that when it's time to use a book, one will regret not having enough. Only now do I understand that opportunities are only given to those who are prepared. You and I still haven't accumulated enough. Yes, what we lack now is time. Fellow Taoist, it's time to go into seclusion. Only seclusion is the key to our progress. Green-robed Xiaohua said with deep emotion. Of course I can go into seclusion. However, I's primordial spirit is very strong. With fellow Taoists comprehending their own techniques, what's the difference between this and I going into seclusion? Xiaohua said with a smile. Of course, after these trivial matters are over, I still have to properly organize what I've gained and comprehended. At this point, Xiaohua smiled. Green-robed fellow Taoists, since you've already comprehended the Pleiades devil-devouring immortal formation and the golden crow immortal slaying demon formation, why don't you use them now? All right. Green-robed Xiaohua nodded. After the last encounter in the Eye of the Sea, this poor Taoist's golden crow immortal slaying demon formation has comprehended more than 200 talismans, so this poor Taoist can barely arrange a powerful formation. Leave this to I. Good. Xiaohua nodded, then took out the Kunlun mirror and instructed. Fellow Taoist, set up the formation first. I will also make some preparations. When everything is ready, I will go and call Fujiwen. Fellow Taoist, please control this Kunlun mirror well. We will work together to break this restriction. I'll listen to fellow Taoist's instructions. Green-robed Xiaohua opened his mouth and swallowed the Kunlun mirror. With a wave of his hand, hundreds of flashing red jade talismans fell into the air. As green-robed Xiaohua formed hand seals, clusters of flames appeared and disappeared into the void. After half an hour, green-robed Xiaohua finished setting up the golden crow immortal slaying demon formation. Xiaohua also thought of the details of breaking the formation. Then, Xiaohua nodded towards green-robed Xiaohua and walked out of the medicinal garden. Xiaohua passed through the alchemy room and arrived at Song Langzi's inner mansion. When he saw the situation in front of him, the joy on his face disappeared and was replaced by a layer of frost. Because on the side of the bed, there was a scholarly cultivator in bright yellow clothes carefully examining the Qianquan bag in his hand. At the feet of this scholarly cultivator, Fujiwen was curled up on the ground with a painful expression on his face. Obviously, the scholarly cultivator was interrogating him. Who is it? When Xiaohua walked out of the pill room, the scholarly cultivator immediately noticed. He raised his head and looked at Xiaohua with a gaze like lightning. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and stared at the scholarly cultivator coldly. Who are you? Ha! The scholarly cultivator was not afraid of Xiaohua. He looked at the Qianquan bag in his hand and put it away. He kicked Fujiwen and laughed. I am naturally me. You should be the cultivator who came in with the little scholar. Oh, why do you look like a Taoist? Your luck is pretty good. You can actually touch Song Langzi's inner palace. Quickly take out your Qianquan bag and I will spare your lives. Who are you? Xiaohua did not answer and only coldly looked at the scholarly cultivator. The scholarly cultivator was stunned. He looked at his feet in disbelief and then looked at Xiaohua. He blinked his eyes and said in surprise, I didn't tell you my name because I didn't want to take your lives. Could it be that there are people in this world who don't want to take their lives? Who are you? Xiaohua released his soul sense but could not determine the cultivation level of this scholarly cultivator. Therefore, he did not dare to act blindly without thinking. He only wanted to provoke this scholarly cultivator and make him attack. Only then could he protect Fujiwen from harm. But at this time, although Fujiwen's expression was extremely distorted and he was enduring a strange kind of pain, his eyes blinked from time to time as if he wanted to say something to Xiaohua. My name is Huang Shou, the scholarly cultivator said with a fiendish smile. Since you know my name, don't think of leaving this cave alive. Your Excellency, don't you want to know who I am? Xiaohua smiled and took 2 steps forward. The scholarly cultivator named Huang Shou shrugged. He waved his hand and took out a folding fan. This folding fan was only 1 foot long and was golden in color. When Huang Shou opened the folding fan, a picture of birds chirping in an empty valley was revealed. At this time, Huang Shou had a lazy expression on his face. He kicked Fujiwen to the side and said with a smile, 2 people who are about to die, so what if I know your name? My name is Xiaohua. Seeing this, Xiaohua's heart settled. He took 2 steps forward and said with a smile, Fellow Immortal Huang, when you reach the underworld, don't forget. Oh, right, I also have a Dharma name. Taoist Xiao. Saying this, Xiaohua waved his hand. The soaring dragon shears flashed with a golden light and slashed towards Huang Shou's neck. Xiaohua hated this Huang Shou very much. Ah! Nascent soul! When Huang Shou saw the golden light and heard Xiaohua say his Dharma name, his expression immediately changed. He waved the folding fan in his right hand and instead of advancing, he retreated and threw himself at Fujiwen. Die! Xiaohua's eyes flashed with a cold light. He flew up and grabbed with his right hand. A powerful imprisoning force fell towards Huang Shou. Seeing Xiaohua fly a few feet away, Huang Shou's originally shocked face suddenly revealed a smile. His flying figure also suddenly stopped. Yellow clouds appeared around his body. On the folding fan in his right hand, the straight mountain peak actually flew out from the folding fan. Tens of thousands of armor inscriptions surged and blocked in front of the soaring dragon shears. At the same time, Huang Shou flicked his left hand. A fist-sized imperial equipment rushed into the air. In an instant there were tens of thousands of multicolored lights. Clang! A crisp sound rang out. The soaring dragon shears streaked across the mountain peak like lightning and split it in half. The folding fan in Huang Shou's hand also broke at the same time. A trace of surprise suddenly appeared on Huang Shou's smiling face. His entire body quickly retreated and dodged the soaring dragon shears. At this moment, a sudden change occurred. Xiaohua's body stagnated. His soul consciousness suddenly swept back. His face was also filled with astonishment. Who? But the place where Xiaohua's soul consciousness swept through, that is, the space on both sides of the cave entrance of the alchemy room distorted inch by inch. Waves of righteous qi and inscriptions flowed out. Two Huang Shou wearing bright yellow clothes appeared. Moreover, these two people also held fist-sized imperial equipment in their hands. The multicolored lights of these imperial equipment were exactly the same as Huang Shou's imperial equipment. At this moment, although Xiaohua didn't know whether these two people were Huang Shou's primordial spirit or something else, how could he not understand that he had already fallen into Huang Shou's trap? At the same time that he schemed for Huang Shou to leave Fujiwen, Huang Shou also schemed for him to step out of the alchemy room. Xiaohua, hand over your life! As soon as the two Huang Shou behind Xiaohua appeared, they shouted in unison. At the same time, they urged the imperial equipment in their hands. Strings of inscriptions flowed like lightning in the multicolored light. In the blink of an eye, they merged together. The multicolored light shrouded an area of several dozen feet to the left of Xiaohua. The inscriptions on the imperial equipment drove thousands of righteous qi ribbons and wrapped around Xiaohua in an extremely mysterious trajectory. -13. Chapter 3758. Roar! Sensing the terrifying imprisoning power within these inscriptions, Xiaohua was greatly alarmed. These inscriptions were clearly designed to deal with Tao sect cultivators. The true essence within his meridians was imprisoned, and he couldn't activate it at all. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly displayed his transcendence golden body, and his figure rapidly expanded, wanting to break through the binding of these inscriptions. Rumble! Xiaohua's transcendence golden body had just appeared when the three imperial treasures let out a rumbling sound. The entire space enveloped by multicolored light trembled. Following the trembling, the multicolored light suddenly converged, and the imperial treasures fell at a speed invisible to the naked eye. Xiaohua was caught off guard. Although his transcendence golden body flashed with a dark golden brilliance, wanting to dodge the imperial treasures still fell on Xiaohua's transcendence golden body in the end. The three imperial treasures turned into a complete one at this time, forcefully locking Xiaohua's neck like a shackle. As this shackle fell, immediately thousands of inscriptions mixed with a vast aura were born from the void. It was like a heavenly punishment prison crystal inscription chain, locking Xiaohua's entire body. Oh! The transcendence golden body let out a rare groan, like the snoring of a sleeping demon god. Xiaohua seemed to be angry, and his transcendence golden body madly expanded. However, Zalala! The chains made a jerky sound, and the vast aura within the inscriptions tightly bound Xiaohua's transcendence golden body. With Xiaohua's strength, he actually couldn't break free. On the contrary, because it expanded, the inscription chains spun even more crazily, suppressing Xiaohua's heavenly infusion technique and heavenly laws embodiment technique. Under this powerful force, The huge transcendence golden body shrank in circles. Xiao Hua was truly extremely shocked. The strength of the three Huangshous was only at the upper fourth level of essence energy, which was also the realm of great confusion. They had yet to reach the level of great grandmaster who could refine the spirit back to the void. However, this imperial equipment was truly strange. It seemed to have been specially refined to restrain Taoist cultivators. Even Xiao Hua, who could kill Taoist cultivators at the fifth level of essence energy, was firmly locked in place. Ha! As expected of someone on the yellow board. Under the joint attack of us three brothers, you still have the strength to struggle. Huangshou saw Xiao Hua fall into the trap and laughed towards the sky. Big brother. The Confucian cultivator behind Xiao Hua landed on the left, with a pleasant surprise on his face. Yellow token to suppress this bastard. This fellow's strength was simply too terrifying. I've never seen a Taoist cultivator who could still struggle after being locked down by the yellow earth lock. Don't worry, third brother. The other Huangshou chuckled and said, Big brother took the little scholar cultivator's Qianquan bag. There were many rare treasures in it. It seems that he obtained them from Song Lungzi's inner palace. This Xiao Hua's Qianquan bag naturally has many more things. Let's take the Qianquan bag first. Okay, I'll go now. The so-called third brother agreed and was about to descend. At this time, Xiao Hua was already standing on the ground. Using both arms to support himself, the yellow earth lock once again let out a chi-la sound. However, that was all it took to scare the three Huangshous so much that their expressions changed. The third brother even took half a step back. The Xianwang token? Who are you? Could it be related to the mysterious yellow list? Xiao Hua didn't withdraw his transcendence golden body. After hearing this, his face turned cold, and he asked coldly, What Xianwang list? I don't know. Huangshou simply didn't answer Xiao Hua's question. He scolded, Third brother, quickly take his Qianquan bag. Don't talk nonsense with him. With that, Huangshou took out a 3-inch seal from his bosom. The top of the seal was 1 inch long and the bottom was 2 inches long yellow. A golden light flashed from the bottom of the seal. This was the Xianwang token Huangshou was talking about. Yes, big brother. The triplet brother, who looked exactly like Huangshou, agreed and walked to the front of Xiao Hua's golden body. However, before he could raise his hand, the Tingjiao scissors, which had just fallen to the ground, suddenly flew up and slashed his neck faster than lightning. Although countless inscriptions surged out from the bright yellow clothes to resist, these inscriptions were instantly cut in half along with his neck. How is this possible? The triplet brother opened his mouth, and a shadow of his primordial spirit flew out from his neck. He shouted, How can a cultivator locked by the yellow ground lock still have spiritual power? Swish! The golden light of the Tingjiao shears was truly overbearing. The primordial spirit only swayed, but the tail of the Tingjiao shears swung, and the primordial spirit was also cut into 2 halves. It was even neater than a piece of white paper cut with scissors. Boom! As the Tingjiao shears showed off its power, a colorful beam of light suddenly appeared from the left side of the elixir room of the cave residence, and hit the other triplet brother of Huangshou with lightning speed. The Confucian cultivator screamed, and the inscriptions and noble spirit surging around him were swallowed up by the beam of light. Even the shadow of his primordial spirit was killed by the beam of light before it could escape. Who? Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Before Huangshou's Xianhuang token could be used, his 2 triplet brothers were killed. Huangshou couldn't help but look at the source of the beam of light in horror. Unfortunately, the clear eye technique and the divine sense technique were useless. He couldn't see anything at all. However, even if he didn't know that it was Xiao Hua's invisible nascent soul, he also knew that the person who came must be related to Xiao Hua. He decisively opened his mouth, and a stream of true qi gushed out and fell on the Xianhuang token. Boom! The Xianhuang token suddenly expanded, and emitted a brilliance like the sun. Rumble! Under this sun, 2 fist-sized green seal characters rushed out from between Xiao Hua's eyebrows, and then the heaven and earth chanted. Layers of faint green lightning appeared above Huang Shou's head, and hit him head-on. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh! Like falling snow melting into water, in the sunlight brilliance of the mysterious yellow token, clusters of inscriptions turned invisible, and streams of awe-inspiring qi were struck into nothingness. Huang Shou was like a bald chicken with plucked feathers, trembling as he stood in front of Xiaohua. Xiao! Xiaohua! Huang Shou couldn't help but beg for mercy, but just as he cried out, the murderous golden light appeared again with a whoosh, and Huang Shou's body was split in half from top to bottom. The nascent soul that had already refined qi and returned to spirit was immediately killed by the lightning as soon as it appeared. Fellow Taoist, you were a bit careless. Green-robed Xiaohua put away the Kunlun mirror and looked at Xiaohua, who had already put away his Dharma body and was looking down at the so-called yellow earth lock. Alas! Xiaohua sighed and shook his head slightly. Yes. This Xiao only thought that only I had the luck to enter Senior Tsung Lang's cave, but I didn't expect that others would also occasionally step on dog shit. However, if these 3 Confucian cultivators who are only at the 4th level of origin energy want to sneak attack this Xiao, they are still too weak. Haha. Green-robed Xiaohua knew that although his appearance had changed the situation of the battle and killed the 3 Confucian cultivators, he also knew that even without him, Xiaohua's soul technique would have been able to succeed, so he simply smiled and asked, Do you still need this poor Taoist's help? No need. Fellow Taoists, go set up the formation to break the restriction. These 3 Confucian cultivators should be following behind us. Since they are here and Zhai Xingzi and the others haven't yet, Zhai Xingzi and the others won't come. Xiaohua shook his head. Wait until I see the memories of these 3 people. Then I will know the cause of this matter. Okay. Green-robed Xiaohua agreed and didn't say anything else. Xiaohua's soul thread reached out from between his eyebrows and landed between Huang Shou's eyebrows. After a moment, he looked at Huang Shou's 2 triplets and unconsciously frowned. Strange. These 3 people's memories, why do they have traces of being erased? Apart from knowing that these 3 people are called Huang Shou, Huang Jin, and Huang Ji, this Xiao can't see their origins at all. However, I heard Huang Shou mention the mysterious yellow proclamation just now. Moreover, the imperial tool is called the yellow earth lock and the imperial tool similar to the seal is called the mysterious yellow token. These 3 people must be related to the mysterious yellow proclamation. Just as he thought of this, the Confucian cultivator Xiaohua smiled and said, Fellow Taoists, think about it more. Star-Lord Palace's Gusuchioran is called Gusuchiodi. Huang Shou, Huang Jin, and Huang Ji have the surname Huang and the given name Shou Jinji. Isn't this the surname Tian Di Xian Huang in the 1,000-character classic? Isn't this the surname Tian Di Xian Huang in the 1,000-character classic? Yes, fellow Taoist, you're right. I understand. Xiaohua sighed. Previously, this Xiao thought that the mysterious yellow proclamation was just a bounty list. I didn't expect that there would be a mysterious yellow token after the mysterious yellow proclamation. It seems that this Xiao has caused trouble. Fellow Taoist, you don't cause trouble, but trouble always provokes you. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua said again. We Confucian cultivators emphasize cooperation and cooperation. Fellow Taoist, you have to think about it more. If you want to run amok on the hidden immortal continent by yourself, I'm afraid it will be difficult. Yes, I understand. You can open this yellow earth lock, Xiaohua said with a frown. Puff. Above Xiaohua's head, a 3-colored cloud spurted out and turned into 3 big hands that fell on the yellow earth lock that imprisoned Xiaohua. The 3 big hands turned into inscriptions that fell on the yellow earth lock according to the memories of Huang Shou and the other triplets. These inscriptions flickered and changed from time to time. After a while there was a crisp "Kacha" sound, and the yellow earth lock split into 3 and fell in the air. Xiaohua waved his hand, and the yellow earth lock and the mysterious yellow token both fell into his hand. He carefully looked at them and said in a low voice, Since there is a yellow earth lock, there should also be a mysterious heaven lock. The yellow earth lock is used to lock Tao cultivators on the yellow proclamation, and the mysterious heaven lock has always been used to lock down cultivators on the mysterious proclamation. It seems that there are many immortal palaces on the hidden immortal continent. There is not only one Star-Lord Hall. After speaking, Xiaohua opened his mouth, and the yellow earth lock and the mysterious yellow token both fell into the hands of Confucian cultivator Xiaohua. Xiaohua also opened his mouth and spat out four-colored true qi to take the two imperial treasures into his body. After Xiaohua removed the restriction on Fu Jiwen's body, Fu Jiwen stood up and said very embarrassedly, "Disciple was careless." "Thank you, master." Xiaohua nodded and asked, "What's the matter with these three people?" -13. Chapter 37:59. "Okay, father understands," Fu Jiwen hurriedly said. "Senior Tsang Langzi's orthodoxy and the Tao of Array are in the cave that disciple went to. Disciple put everything in the Qianquan bag. When disciple saw that there was nothing left behind and came out, I saw the three cultivators enter the inner cave. The cultivator called Huang Shou captured disciple without saying anything and wanted to interrogate me about master's whereabouts. However, disciple did not give in, so the two cultivators ambushed me in the air while Huang Shou waited here for master to come out." "What else did the three of them talk about?" Xiaohua asked. "Can you tell the origin of these three people?" "I can't." Fu Jiwen shook his head without hesitation. "Other than interrogating disciple, these three people were communicating with each other, as if they were hiding something. If not for master's interrogations, disciple wouldn't even know that this cultivator was called Huang Shou." And Xiaohua nodded. With a wave of his hand, he burned the three corpses with true samadhi fire and took away all the Qianquan bags. However, after thinking for a moment, Xiaohua took out another Qianquan bag and handed it to Fu Jiwen. "This should be Senior Tsang Langzi's array. You can keep it. This is your own fate." Master, disciple's Tao of Array still needs master to teach me." "Isn't disciple's opportunity given by master?" Fu Jiwen hurriedly said with a smile. "Besides, isn't disciple's thing also master's? Master should first comprehend it, and then pass it on to disciple." "And that's fine too." Xiaohua was not polite and took everything and said, "It's not safe to leave it with you. If master keeps it, no one will be able to find it." Fu Jiwen looked at the pill room again and said with a smile, "Seems like master is also returning from a rewarding journey." "Not at all," Xiaohua said with a bitter smile. "In the pill room, there's nothing but a few jade bottles. Instead, there are some good things in the herb garden. Let's go, master still needs to borrow your heaven punishment prison crystal to break the seal." "Yes, master." Fu Jiwen nodded and said with a smile. "But master, when will you help disciple with this heaven punishment prison crystal? Isn't this an opportunity?" "Let's go." Xiaohua patted Fu Jiwen's head and said with a smile. "Yes, master." Fu Jiwen was overjoyed. When Xiaohua brought Fu Jiwen into the pill room, he still looked at the entrance of the cave and stared at it for a moment. Since Huang Shou and the other two were able to enter this place, then Xiaohua and Fu Jiwen were definitely not the only lucky ones. His previous thoughts were too arbitrary. Perhaps Duan Muliangxing, Jai Xingzi and the others would also come here. Jai Xingzi and the others were still fine, but if Duan Muliangxing were to come, things would be very bad. Therefore, when Xiaohua sent Fu Jiwen to check the restrictions on the underworld fruit, he also carefully set up the capital star formation in front of the entrance of the medicinal garden. Fortunately, although Tsang Langzi had already set up a formation in the space of the medicinal garden, Xiaohua's jade talisman was also set up without expending much magic power. "It's better to be safe than sorry." Xiaohua finished setting up the formation, and only then did he relax. He thought to himself, "I'll remember these words." In the future, he couldn't let his guard down. Anything that could happen would happen. Moreover, it can happen at any time when you are not paying attention. Also, if the origins of Huang Shou and the other two are related to the profound Yellow Order, then I'll have to be even more careful in the future. The strength I've displayed now is at the upper fourth level of essence energy. Whether it's the Duanmu family or the profound Yellow Order, the cultivators they sent out are all around the lower 5th level of essence energy. Although Huang Shou and the other 2 were at the upper 4th level of essence energy, the 3 of them, together with the Yellow Earth Lock, were able to firmly suppress the late-stage nascent soul cultivators of the Tao sect. Now that I've killed the 3 of them, I'm afraid that the cultivators who come in the future will all be at the upper 5th level of essence energy. Our days are getting worse and worse. Chirp chirp. Xiaohua's mind was full of worries. Just as he returned to the medicinal garden, Little Silver and Xiaogui immediately flew over. Xiaogui's face was red and cute. With a wave of her hand, a large amount of spirit herbs and spirit fruits landed in Xiaohua's hands. Not bad, not bad. Xiaohua put away the things and patted Xiaogui's head. He smiled and praised. You two are really capable. Hurry up and go. Keep up the good work and bring everything back home. Chirp chirp. Little Silver chirped cheerfully and swiftly rushed to a medicinal field protected by a restriction. He bit down with his sharp teeth, and it wasn't long before the restriction was broken. Then, Xiaogui landed in the medicinal field. With a wave of her hands, a dark green halo fell on the spirit herbs, and the intact spirit herbs slowly flew out of the ground. Seeing that the 2 little ones were busy beyond words, Xiaohua flew over to the Yellow Springs. At that moment, Fu Jiwen had already been looking at it for a long time. When he saw Xiaohua come over, he hurriedly said in a low voice, Shifu, this restriction should be called a boundary. It's extremely powerful. I'm afraid this disciple can't help Shifu. Isn't it good that the boundary is powerful? Xiaohua smiled. How much longer do you need to use the heavenly punishment prison crystal? 4 more hours. Fu Jiwen thought for a moment, then said, But Shifu, in my opinion, even if we use the heavenly punishment prison crystal, I'm afraid we won't be able to break this boundary. After all, the boundary is too big, and it's different from the restriction on the jade case from before. It doesn't seem to be actively attacking. Shifu already knew this. Xiaohua said indifferently. Go take a look elsewhere first. Not only are there a lot of spirit herbs in this medicinal field, the spirit gathering arrays on each field are different as well, which will be extremely useful for you to comprehend arrays. Also, memorize them well and tell Shifu about them in detail later. Yes, Shifu. Fu Jiwen's eyes lit up, and he agreed to fly elsewhere. On the path of formations, Fu Jiwen and Xiaohua were in a different situation. Fu Jiwen had seen plenty of formation diagrams, spirit formations, and essence formations, but he had never received any real guidance. He had only seen a few real formations. Xiaohua, on the other hand, had a very high starting point. He had started with innate divine restrictions, such as the capital stars array, but he was very lacking in the flexible use of ordinary magic arrays. What the 2 of them lacked was something Tsang Longzi could teach them. Just as Xiaohua said, there was a huge spirit gathering array on this medicinal field, and each field had a different spirit gathering array according to the different spirit herbs and their habits. The spirit gathering arrays were similar in nature, but the details were very different. This was the use of arrays. When Xiaohua entered the Misty Mountain Bewildering Array, he was also very emotional. He could see through the nature of these bewildering arrays at a glance, but he didn't know how to set them up. There were many spirit-gathering arrays in the entire medicinal field. Not only were they useful to Fu Jiwen, but even Xiaohua himself would benefit a lot from comprehending them. After sending Fu Jiwen away, Xiaohua flew around the restriction for a long time. He discussed with the green-robed Xiaohua several times, and finally finalized all the details. Seeing that it was almost time, Xiaohua stood in the air. Fu Jiwen had already flown over and took out the heavenly punishment prison crystal, waiting for Xiaohua's order. Shifu. Seeing Xiaohua standing there with his eyes closed, Fu Jiwen reminded, It's almost time. Okay, put the heavenly punishment prison crystal on the restriction. Xiaohua opened his eyes and said calmly as the magic power in his body accumulated. Yes, master. Fu Jiwen looked at some of the heaven's punishment prison crystals that were already surging with rosy clouds. He gently loosened his hand and the Heaven's Punishment prison crystals fell towards the barrier below him. Before the Heaven's Punishment prison crystals touched the barrier, layers of Heaven's Punishment thunder had already formed. Crackle. Thunderbolts were born from the void and fell inside the Heavenly Punishment prison crystal. At the same time, the thunderbolts also affected the barrier. Unfortunately, to Xiaohua and Fu Jiwen's disappointment, when the thunderbolts fell on the barrier slightly fluctuated with magic power. This fluctuation was like a surging whirlpool, scattering the power of the thunderbolts around the barrier. It didn't produce any counterattack power. Therefore, the Heavenly Punishment thunder didn't have any intention of attacking the barrier and only wreaked havoc around the Heavenly Punishment prison crystal. Shifu. Seeing that the Heavenly Punishment prison crystal didn't work, Fu Jiwen was somewhat embarrassed and said in a low voice. However, Xiaohua seemed to be standing there normally, but all his attention was focused on the point where the Heavenly Punishment prison crystal's thunderbolts came into contact with the barrier. He was carefully observing the movement of the barrier's magic power and the extension of the force. After the Heavenly Punishment prison crystal's thunderbolts passed, Xiaohua opened his mouth and said faintly, "Disciple, you're right. This barrier adheres to defense and doesn't attack. It's completely different from the previous restriction. As the saying goes, one can be strong without desires. This barrier is a rare authentic defensive formation. It doesn't attack at all and only focuses on defense. It's like a defensive cultivator. Because of this, I'm afraid that this barrier can't be completely broken without the strength to pass the tribulation." Fu Jiwen put away the Heavenly Punishment prison crystal and said with a bitter smile, "If that's the case, it seems that only the immortal emperors of the immortal palaces and the patriarchs of the aristocratic families have this cultivation level. Shifu probably can't break the restriction now." Shifu said that to completely break this barrier, one must have the strength to pass the tribulation. Xiaohua laughed mischievously. "But why must Shifu completely break this barrier? If Shifu wants the things inside, Shifu only needs to open a small gap." Disciple understands. Fu Jiwen finally understood why Xiaohua kept staring at the barrier just now. "How can Shifu help? I'm afraid that with your cultivation level, you won't be able to." Xiaohua thought for a moment. "Shifu is afraid of hurting you if you stay here. You'd better collect everything in this medicinal garden with Xiao Gue and Little Silver." "Yes, Shifu." Hearing this, Fu Jiwen very tactfully flew over. Afterwards, Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent and clapped his hands. Buzz! 3 colored true qi gushed out and 9 flying swords flew out from the true qi, letting out ear-piercing sword cries. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua's voice came from the flying swords. "Fellow Immortal, this little one receives the flying swords and gives fellow Immortal a helping hand. I'll have to trouble fellow Immortal." Xiaohua cupped his hands. "This barrier, I'm afraid it won't be easy for me to break through it with my Taoist methods. I'll have to rely on fellow Immortal's Confucian cultivator voice." "Good." The sword qi of the 9 flying swords surged and formed a human figure similar to Xiaohua's size. "This little one has already prepared according to fellow Immortal Green Robe's words." -13. Chapter 3760. Fellow Soul Cultivator, are you ready? Xiaohua nodded his head and asked again. A dark green brilliance gushed out from between Xiaohua's eyebrows and condensed into the shape of lightning. Xiaohua's voice sounded. "I am also ready." "All right, fellow Taoist Soul Cultivator. You've seen for yourself how powerful this barrier is. Given our current strength, there's no way we'll be able to break through it. Even if we use all of the methods we discussed earlier, we'll only be able to tear open a crack in the barrier in the span of a few breaths. Whether or not we'll be able to obtain the underworld fruit will all depend on you. Haha, fellow Taoists, don't worry. This underworld fruit is related to Ai's growth. I care about it more than any of you." Xiaohua laughed, his voice faintly coming from the layers of lightning. "Do it!" Xiaohua ordered. Xiaohua waved his hands, and several sword lights shot into the air. Rumble! A thunderous sound was heard, and 5 colored lightning fell from the sky. It was the Confucian cultivator's 5 chi thunder. The lightning fell and hit the barrier. The barrier was suffused with the color of lightning, like brilliant fireworks, dazzling the entire barrier. 9 heavens divine thunder. Fall! At the same time, the green-robed Xiaohua's voice came from the side of the scholarly cultivator. His shapeless nascent soul rubbed its hands, and the 9 heavens divine thunder was even more vast than the 5 chi thunder. Like a horned dragon, it fell from the sky and rushed toward the barrier. Kacha! A wave-like fluctuation was set off on the barrier. Protrusions appeared on the barrier along with the lightning snakes, blocking the lightning from all directions. Since fellow Taoists have names, I should also have a name for my lightning and thunder technique. Xiaohua's voice was strange, as if it didn't belong in this world. In my name, I call for thunder, 3 corpses in thunder. Fall! Following the appearance of 3 dark green seal characters in the air, 3 extremely simple and indescribable voices came out from the green seal characters. Kacha! Hundreds of dark green lightning threads appeared out of thin air. It was fine if the lightning did not appear, but once it did. Kachacha! Whether it was the 5 chi righteous thunder or the 9 heavens divine thunder, they all made thunderous sounds. The thunderbolts that were originally pouncing towards the barrier all flew towards the 3 corpses in lightning. I owe this. Although Xiaohua's 3 primordial spirits all had the ability to control lightning, he had never used all 3 lightning. Today, in order to break the barrier in a short period of time, he used it, but he didn't expect that there would be such a reaction. Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly waited with rapt attention. If there were any changes, he would immediately isolate himself. Rumble! The green light of the 3 corpses in thunder shone brightly and intertwined with the 5 chi righteous thunder and the 9 heavens godly thunder. In the blink of an eye, the green light converged and formed a thunder that was condensed from lightning threads. Then, the 5 chi righteous thunder turned into 5 colored lightning that circled around the green seal script lightning threads. In the end, the 9 heavens godly thunder turned into hundreds of thunderbolts that roamed around the 5 chi righteous thunder like flames. Good! Xiaohua's eyes lit up. He knew that the 3 types of lightning naturally merged together. As Xiaohua rejoiced in his heart, the ball of lightning that turned into the size of a wicker basket fell on top of the barrier. Ka! An extremely low muffled sound rang out. The ball of lightning actually sank into the barrier. Immediately, the barrier gave birth to a strong vibration. Although the sound wasn't loud, it seemed as if the entire space was shaking. Right now! Xiaohua's heart stirred. He rubbed his hands together, and several fiery red brilliants rushed into the air. Caw! The sound of a bird's cry resounded through the entire space. The Golden Crow Execution Immortal Demon Formation was activated by Xiaohua. Not only was an extremely hot heat generated in the air, a powerful suction force was also generated from the demon formation. Wherever the suction force passed, the heaven and earth origin chi in the entire space was swept away. Immediately, a golden crow that was several jang in size condensed in the heat wave and origin chi. Although this golden crow wasn't too complete, its desolate and unruly aura immediately filled the entire space. Fall! Xiaohua pointed his finger. The golden crow, like a setting sun in the vast sky, fell towards the place where the ball of lightning previously set off ripples. Caw! Another bird's cry rang out. On top of the barrier, the light of lightning hadn't faded away, and the light of fire was born again. A several chi deep dent appeared. Hiss! Admittedly, Fu Jiwen wasn't at the side, but when he saw Xiaohua cast the spell, he immediately came to the side to watch. He saw that Xiaohua's magic power was practically sky-high, but this barrier was even more tenacious. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. In his heart, he became a bit more eager for the Tsang Lang Zi's orthodoxy and formation. Good, Xiaohua's complexion was the same as usual. He wasn't dispirited because his 2 methods didn't tear apart the barrier. He still followed the prescribed order. With a wave of his hand, the soaring dragon scissors transformed into a golden flood dragon. The dragon's tail flung out. Ka! It accurately chopped at the place where the dent was. Afterwards, without waiting for the soaring dragon's scissors to be retracted, the voice of the Confucian cultivator Xiaohua was heard in the air again. Watch me! Woo woo! In the void, hundreds of awe-inspiring chi pillars appeared with a loud bang. A dazzling imperial weapon flew out from the sword light. It was the imperial weapon that was originally called the Imperial Star Stab, but now it was called the Dismal Soul-Injuring Imperial Weapon. The star passing leads the spirit, the star falling injures the soul, the dim injures the soul, the spirit injures the soul. With the noble spirit hit the enchantment. The whole enchantment shook again. The impact pulled the enchantment to the extreme, but in Xiaohua's eyes, the enchantment's tough brilliance was still thin and did not collapse under the three methods of the Confucian soul. Kunlun mirror! Xiaohua shouted. Green-robed Xiaohua was already prepared. He shouted loudly, As you wish! But then, a light pillar once again descended from the sky and hit the connection of the thin threads with a loud bang. The strange thing was, before the crack on the barrier appeared, the Kunlun mirror's light pillar had already penetrated through. Good! Soul Cultivator Xiaohua shouted. Thousands of soul threads rushed into Xiaohua's forehead and followed the Kunlun mirror's light pillar through the collapsing barrier and instantly wrapped around the underworld fruit. Sizzle! A strong corrosive sound came from the water of the yellow spring. Unfortunately, Xiaohua's soul threads had already been tempered by the sea of blood in the netherworld's eye of Million Meng Mountains. This was the water of the yellow spring, and it was far inferior to the netherworld sea. The soul threads wrapped around the underworld fruit, and in the blink of an eye, they retreated back into the mysterious dark cloud. Just when the underworld fruit touched Xiaohua's mysterious dark cloud, the heavenly runes and earth deed of the entire dark cloud emitted a strong brilliance. When the brilliance landed on the underworld fruit, the patterns on the entire fruit and leaves suddenly changed, producing an obscure rumbling sound. In just a few breaths of time, the underworld fruit penetrated through the heavenly runes and earth deed of the underworld fruit and rushed into the mysterious dark cloud. What was even stranger was, just when the underworld fruit rushed into the soul, a thumb-sized root fell off from the underworld fruit. How could Xiaohua not know that this was the root of the underworld fruit? He immediately sent it into the dark side of the dimension. However, before he could take a look, he heard a shrill sound that sounded like the wailing of ghosts and howling of wolves. The entire mysterious dark cloud was rolling violently. It's done, I'll go back first. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua's expression changed greatly. The green light on Xiaohua's forehead disappeared, and he returned to the mysterious dark cloud. As soon as the underworld fruit entered the mysterious dark cloud, it immediately transformed into an infinitely tall tree that soared into the sky. Moreover, through the layers of spirit heavens, the leaves and the fruit produced a heavenly sound that sounded like the green seal script. The heavenly runes and earth deed of the underworld fruit emitted a strange fragrance that penetrated through all the spirit heavens. Amidst the heavenly sound, streams of netherworld water flowed out from the underworld fruit. Runes that were even more ancient and simpler than the green seal script rushed out from the netherworld water and disappeared into the mysterious dark cloud. Under the scouring of these runes, Xiaohua's soul gradually underwent new changes. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua entered the mysterious dark cloud. Seeing so many changes, he knew that there was no big problem. Only then did he feel relieved. Ayo! With a dragon roar, the little white dragon swam its huge body and appeared beside Xiaohua. It greedily sniffed the rare fragrance in the world. Xiaohua received the Soul Cultivator's perception and knew that the underworld fruit was fine. He was overjoyed and said loudly, Fellow Taoists, it's done! Thank you for your help. Good! Congratulations, fellow Taoists! Whether it was the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua or the soul cultivator Xiaohua, they all praised. At this time, looking at the barrier again, the crack that rushed out from the Kunlun mirror had already been repaired. The depression caused by the joint attack of the primordial spirits was also repaired by the other parts of the barrier in just a moment. All of this was like a white horse galloping through a crack. It was exactly as Xiaohua had thought. Of course, it was only at this moment. Not to mention a white horse, even a white tiger would be pulled down by Xiaohua. The underworld fruit was gone, so what if the barrier was repaired? Ha! Congratulations, congratulations! Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands. The scholarly cultivator Xiaohua and the green-robed Xiaohua both put away the primordial and magic arrays, took the magic tools and imperial tools, and returned to the middle and lower dantian respectively. Seeing Xiaohua talking to himself for a long time, and seeing the sword-shaped Xiaohua turn into true energy and enter Xiaohua's head, Fu Jiwen flew into the air and bowed. Congratulations, master. Ha, congratulations too. Xiaohua laughed. You don't need this thing. You'd better look at what's in the medicinal field. Disciple knows. With master's support, disciple doesn't need to worry about medicinal pills and cultivation methods. Fu Jiwen replied. The higher master's cultivation, the happier disciple is. Right, did master use the imperial tool just now? Yes, that imperial tool was obtained by master at the Jade Pavilion conference. Once used, it must kill. Xiaohua nodded. If it's not a critical moment, master won't use it. Heh, master really has a lot of secrets. Fu Jiwen understood as soon as he heard this, and said with a smile. Let's go. Don't say so many useless things. Take away the entire medicinal field, that's the real deal. Xiaohua waved his big sleeves and flew towards Xiaogue and Little Silver. Ah? Take it all away. Fu Jiwen was shocked. Won't master leave some here? If others come in later, it won't be a wasted trip. We can't give them the chance to disturb the peace of Senior Cunglungzi's cave abode. Xiaohua said in all seriousness and awe-inspiring righteousness. Only by cleaning up this place will we not attract the covetous eyes of others. Yes, master. Fu Jiwen curled his lip and hurriedly flew after him. The two of them took Xiaogue and Little Silver, and it took them several days to put all the spirit herbs into the space. Then the two of them looked at the clean medicinal field, clapped their hands, and flew back to the cave abode with smiles on their faces. -13. Chapter 3761. Hee. Xiaohua stepped out of the alchemy room, looked at the empty cave, and said to Fu Jiwen with a smile, Senior Cunglungzi is really interesting. He placed all the treasures in the maze and left nothing in his cave, making people feel disappointed as soon as they entered. Is this also a kind of test? Who knows? Maybe he was afraid that too many cultivators would come in and doubt each other. Fu Jiwen blinked and said, Master, since there is nothing in the cave, we should go out, right? If Senior Dao ran and the others are empty-handed, they are either still wandering in the maze or waiting outside the maze. Don't worry. Xiaohua's gaze fell on the jade Rui on the cloud bed and the jade shelves around it, and said with a smile, We won't be coming to Senior Cunglungzi's cave in the future, and other people probably won't be able to enter. It's a waste to leave these furnishings here. Why don't we take them all away and show them off in the cave when I open the cave? Ah? No way, master. Fu Jiwen completely understood Xiaohua's stinginess. Go, take the jade shelves over there and the things in the cave that can be taken away. Xiaohua ordered without saying anything, and he directly turned around and went into the alchemy room, presumably to see if there was anything else that could be taken away. Fu Jiwen was helpless. He hurriedly entered another immortal's cave and put away the jade table, and so on. When he came out again, he saw that all the jade shelves and jade chairs had disappeared from Xiaohua's side. Xiaohua was walking to the side of the cloud bed. He raised his hand to take the jade table and jade scepter on it. Oh, something is wrong! Just when Xiaohua was about to pick up the jade Rui, a realization came from his mind. There is nothing in the entire cave. Why would there be a jade Rui on the jade table for no reason? Could it be that there is something strange about this jade Rui? No, thinking about it now, this jade Rui was quite strange. With Xiaohua's stingy temperament, once he saw that there was nothing in the cave, he immediately lost interest in the jade Rui. Even Huang Shou and the other two didn't seem to see it. Moreover, this jade Rui was placed so casually, Could it be that Tsang Lungzi left it behind before he left? This Jade Rui. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Xiaohua withdrew his magic power, and carefully examined the jade table, Jade Rui, and the cloud bed. Unfortunately, when Fu Jiwen came over, Xiaohua found nothing. Fu Jiwen was very obedient, and knew that this was not the time for him to speak, so he stood at the side in silence. Strange! Xiaohua said again, and floated onto the cloud bed. Sitting on it, he looked around again, but didn't find anything. Xiaohua looked around the cave again, and when he saw that the Jade Rui was pointing at a distance, his heart was moved. He concentrated for a moment, and then released his divine sense again. Unfortunately, his divine sense still couldn't leave his body, so Xiaohua had no choice but to release his soul. When his soul swept over the stone wall where the Jade Rui was pointing, Xiaohua's body shook, and he hurriedly shouted, Fu Jiwen, quickly go to the entrance of the cave and protect your master. Remember, don't look at your master. Yes, master! Fu Jiwen was shocked, and immediately floated to the entrance of the cave. With his back facing Xiaohua, he looked outside the cave with a serious expression. Xiaohua took a deep breath, released his soul, and slowly scanned the stone wall in the distance. He saw that the Jade Rui was pointing at a place that was invisible to the naked eye, but his soul could see that there were 13 ants. Yes, they were ants. One of the world's most lowly little things, and now they were arranged in a strange formation. Each of them looked different, and they were crawling on the stone wall. However, these ants were different from the ones Xiaohua usually saw. These ants seemed to have small protrusions on their backs, like wings. It was clear that Tsang Lungzi left behind the Jade Rui, and sealed his divine sense and Buddhist sense, for no other reason than to not let others easily see these 13 ants that seemed to be able to fly. When Xiaohua's soul came in contact with these ants, a grand aura immediately entered his mind. These ants, what are they? Why does Senior Tsang Lungzi treasure them so much? Xiaohua sat down cross-legged, and released his soul again. Starting from the first ant, he saw the small ant's antennae and black shell gradually become clear, and that kind of vast aura became more and more intense. Boom! With a loud sound, the ant crawled up, and the whole ant became huge. A primordial chaos appeared from the ant's body, and immediately submerged Xiaohua's soul. A very strange cultivator came out from the ant, and turned into a 10,000 zhang tall Dharma body. A voice like the sound of heaven came out from the cultivator's mouth. The path of heaven began in the primordial chaos. Along with this voice, Xiaohua's figure became illusory again, and the galaxy in his eyes reappeared. The strange star power penetrated the 10,000 layers of restrictions and fell on Xiaohua's body. Obscure fluctuations came out from Xiaohua's body, and fell into the stone wall and the maze. The entire maze of Misty Mountain gave birth to strange fluctuations with Xiaohua's comprehension. Fu Jiwen, who was guarding the entrance of the cave, was the first to bear the brunt. The heavenly book in his body flew out as soon as it came into contact with the fluctuations. The comprehension in the stone wall before was born from his heart. Fu Jiwen knew this was a chance, so he didn't dare to be negligent. He sat down cross-legged, and hundreds of inscriptions formed a formation talisman. Inside the maze, the confused Zhang Daoran, who was running around in confusion, suddenly came into contact with the fluctuations, and his body trembled rapidly. Guard! He just said this, and immediately sat down cross-legged, which made his disciples shocked. Then, without waiting for them to take out their magic weapons, the other late nascent soul stage cultivator, Reverend Han, also showed a happy face, and hurriedly said, You don't need to guard, quickly cultivate. There's a big change in the maze, and there's a comprehension of the way of heaven. Then, Reverend Han also closed his eyes to comprehend the fluctuations, and all the disciples also sat around the two, cultivating without saying anything. Zhang Daoran, Sun Kong Shengren, Zhai Xingzi, and the others were the same. Only Gusuchiodi and Gong Shuisen sensed something different, and hurriedly accompanied Zhai Xingzi to comprehend. As for what they would gain, only Tsang Lungzi would know. As for Duanwu Liangxing, Under the fluctuations, the maze was filled with an irresistible power of the way of heaven. Although he was angry, he didn't dare to act rashly. He could only close his eyes, wait for his heart to calm down, and carefully comprehend. The 13 ants were the 13 realms, and also the 13 supernatural powers. They involved formations, pill refinement, weapon refinement, Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism, body cultivation, comprehension, and the way of heaven. The supernatural powers inside were very heterogeneous, and even Xiaohua, who had 10 primordial spirits, was amazed. In the beginning, Xiaohua examined them one by one, but in the end, Xiaohua simply divided his soul consciousness into 10 parts. Aside from Bodhi, who was in seclusion, the other primordial spirits followed Xiaohua's mind to comprehend. In the end, Xiaohua understood that most of the 13 ants were created by Tsenglongzi, a tribulation-passing cultivator, while a small portion was accumulated by Tsenglongzi. Tsenglongzi himself didn't cultivate, and these. Xiaohua accepted them one by one. Enlightenment ants. After an unknown amount of time, Xiaohua slowly opened his eyes, looked at the ants that had disappeared, and said in a low voice, "This, I'm afraid, Senior Tsenglongzi's true legacy? What I obtained in the alchemy room, and what Fujiwen obtained from the other side of the cave, compared to this, TSK, it's insignificant. Who would have thought that the Tao legacy of a tribulation-passing cultivator would be carried on a small ant? A world in a flower, a spring and autumn in a leaf. Senior Tsenglongzi, I didn't expect you to be so proficient in Buddhism as well." With that thought, Xiaohua's body suddenly trembled, and his eyes flashed with shock. Senior Tsenglongzi left behind such a legacy as a tribulation-passing cultivator, but the spiritual sense and other secret techniques within it don't seem to be as powerful as the secret techniques Do Shanjun gave me. What cultivation base does Do Shanjun have? Could he be a grand ascension stage cultivator? Xiaohua's countless thoughts turned into questions in the end. These questions could only be buried deep in his heart, and he couldn't reveal them to anyone. Do Shanjun's identity could only be revealed by Do Shanjun himself, and if Xiaohua revealed even the slightest hint of doubt, Do Shanjun wouldn't hesitate to kill him. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua floated down from the bed of clouds. The jade table and the jade scepter were taken into his space. However, when Xiaohua was about to take the bed of clouds away with a flick of his sleeve, Xiaohua was shocked. The bed of clouds seemed to be connected to the stone wall, not moving in the slightest. "Forget it," Xiaohua smiled. "I've gained a lot today, so I'll leave the cloud bed here." In the instant that Xiaohua carved the cloud bed, the fluctuations of the heavenly Tao within the misty mountain bewildering formation instantly disappeared, and a deafening sound rang out. All of the cultivators who were trapped in the bewildering formation saw a flash of light in front of them, and they could vaguely see that it was a rather large cave abode. Leaving aside the fact that everyone opened their eyes from their meditation, they were ecstatic to find that they were facing Tsenglongzi's real Immortal's cave. Xiaohua walked down from the cloud bed and frowned. He sensed the sounds and changes in the maze inside the Immortal's cave, and then walked behind Fujiwen. The talismans around Fujiwen's body were still fluttering, but looking at them, they were much more advanced than before. "Not bad!" Xiaohua smiled to himself, then pinched his fingers to calculate. He raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "Damn it, it took me 3 years to comprehend the bewildering formation. These 3 years have been very fulfilling." "Master!" Fujiwen put away the inscriptions and jumped up. "Congratulations, Master." Congratulations to you too. Your heavenly book seems to have been completely condensed?" Xiaohua asked with a smile as he floated Fujiwen up. "Master, with your help, it has been condensed to 90%. Fujiwen respectfully said. "As long as this disciple accumulates a little, I estimate that this disciple will be able to enter the Great Confucian realm within 3 years." "Good!" Xiaohua clapped his hands and said, "I'm very pleased to have such a disciple." Fujiwen did some calculations and said with a smile, "Master, we've been here for more than 3 years, let's go out early." "Okay." Xiaohuan nodded and led Fuji Wen towards the entrance of the cave. -13. Chapter 3762. 100,000 miles away from the misty mountain maze, there was a place with dangerous mountains and rivers. The mountains were tens of thousands of feet high, and the rivers were majestic. There were layers upon layers of mountains, and the rivers were raging. The most eye-catching thing was the 5 strange hills. The hills looked like 5 monstrous beasts. They were either lying down, standing, curled up, or flying. In the middle of the hills, there was a head that could be faintly seen. Although the faces of the heads could not be seen clearly, there was a strange aura coming from the hills. This aura covered 1,000 miles, and within this 1,000 miles, there was no sign of life. Between the hills was a huge river. This surging river brought with it yellow sand as it poured down from the distant mountains. After passing through the hills, the yellow river had a dark red color. Above the hills, gusts of desolate wind swirled in the air. The red clouds that filled the sky seemed to be falling from the sky, pressing down extremely low. A kind of pressure that suffocated the earth came from the clouds. Woo woo hoo hoo! Other than the sound of the river, there was only the whimper of the cold wind. There was no other sound in the sky. Swoosh swoosh. At some unknown time, snowflakes larger than goose feathers began to fall from the red clouds. They seemed to be silent, but every time they swept across the chilly wind, there would be an indescribable fluctuation that gradually filled the world. Seeing that the mountains and rivers were about to be covered by the snow, a demonic cloud about 10 feet in size flew over. However, this demonic cloud only flashed through the snow and didn't stop at all. After flying for 1,000 miles over the hills, the demonic cloud suddenly turned around. When a powerful demonic sense swept across the hills and river, it stopped again. The demonic cloud dispersed, revealing a well-built demonic beast. This demonic beast was about 10 feet in size. A pair of withered yellow eyes revealed surprise, and the antlers on top of his head were very eye-catching. Wasn't this the Stag King? A halo appeared in the Stag King's eyes. It expanded like ripples, and when it landed in the nearby space, the goose feather-sized snowflakes stopped in midair. In the blink of an eye, the space within 1,000 feet was covered by this halo. Boom! Unfortunately, it was only a few breaths. The aura between the hills couldn't be suppressed and rushed into the halo. All the stagnation collapsed with a loud bang. The Stag King's body trembled a few times. A 5-colored brilliance appeared from his body, and a huge deer body was revealed. Haha! It's really here! Not bad, it's here! Although the Stag King's body was revealed, he was unusually ecstatic. He looked up to the sky and let out a long howl. After half a cup of tea's time, the Stag King stopped. He looked around and flew to a mountain ridge in the distance. With a wave of his hand, a strange feather appeared in his hand. Puff! A demonic aura fell on the feather, and the feather glowed with starlight. A strange bird the size of a fist was born from the starlight. The Stag King opened his mouth and chanted a few indescribable demonic words. The strange bird nodded and spread its wings to 10 feet in size. It then rushed into the sky and disappeared in an instant. This king will wait here! The Stag King sat down casually and looked at the hills in the distance with satisfaction. He smiled and said, Indeed, hard work pays off. This king has searched for 1,000 years and left footprints all over the 1,000 demonic sacred realm. I really didn't expect this place to be in the hidden immortal continent. If this king didn't read all the books of the human race, how would I know? However, even in the hidden immortal continent, there are no less than 100 places with such strange phenomena. Old Monster Jifeng and the others have come in vain. This king has already obtained the first merit. The Stag King waited for dozens of days. On this day, the dark clouds looked like normal, but suddenly, a burst of fire flew over from the distance. The fire landed on the clouds and forced the dark clouds to roll, as if the clouds were splitting open to welcome it. At the same time, a deep sound like the groan of heaven and earth came from the distance. Seeing the strange situation in the sky, How could the Stag King not know that a demonic beast was coming? He stood up with a bitter smile and said to himself, "Why is this guy so arrogant wherever he goes? Doesn't he know that this is the hidden immortal continent? If some literary sage or literary star finds out, won't we all be in trouble? Oh, of course, this king will be in trouble, but this guy can't be in trouble." As the scarlet flame vermilion bird, the most promising vermilion bird to become a great sage, he cultivated to the moon-picking realm in just over 1,000 years. His strength is similar to a human's 6th-level origin energy. If he is bullied by a human, damn it, won't the Vermilion Bird clan turn the hidden immortal continent upside down? The Stag King flaunted himself as a king, so he naturally didn't dare to be negligent in front of such a proud genius. He was already standing in the air. Seeing the fire approaching, he raised his hands and bowed. "Fellow immortal Zhu, you've worked hard." "Humph." A very unruly voice came from the distant fire. Once the voice came, all the fire and deep groans disappeared. It was as if everything in the world was gathered in a ball of dazzling fire. That flame flashed in the sky and disappeared. When it appeared, it was already in front of the Stag King's eyes. After the flame subsided, a several John tall demonic beast covered in scarlet flames walked out of the fire. "Just call me Shu Mei. What's with the greeting? It's as if you're a Confucian human." "Hee, you're right. I've been walking around the hidden immortal continent for a long time. It's inevitable that I'll be tainted by the stinky human customs." The Stag King straightened up and laughed. "This so-called fellow immortal is just a flattery between the human race. It's really funny." Zhu Mei nodded slightly. That obvious demonic body was still there, as if it disdained to transform into a human. He looked left and right, then his fiery eyes fell on the 5 hills. He asked faintly, "This is the Cold Spirit Valley you mentioned?" "Yes, it's here. It's exactly the same as the memories passed down in my clan." The Stag King nodded and answered. Zhu Mei's eyes flashed. No emotions could be seen in his eyelids. He only said coldly, "That's strange. How come I didn't know that the demon race had such a Cold Spirit Valley? And this Cold Spirit Valley is actually in the hidden immortal continent." Hee. The Stag King laughed and said, "Zhu Mei, you're from the Vermilion Bird clan. You're a higher clan in the demon race. How can my Stag clan compare to you? I'm afraid the Vermilion Bird clan disdained to pass down this Cold Spirit Valley, right?" That seems to be the case." Zhu Mei nodded, his face full of pride, and said, "It's just that I owed you a little 100 years ago. Otherwise, I wouldn't waste my time here." The Stag King didn't get angry. He smiled and said, "Don't look down on it. As far as I know, this is where my demon race used to cultivate the sun-devouring demon physique. Even if it's abandoned now, and no longer beneficial to my cultivation, perhaps the ancient rewards are still inside. If I can get my hands on some ancient pure bloodline, it'll be greatly beneficial to my cultivation. I hope it's as you say." Zhu Mei stretched lazily and opened her mouth. A pillar of flame soared into the sky, dispersing the clouds in the surrounding 1,000 feet. "I can't believe that there's a bloodline purer than my Vermilion Bird clan here. This is an ancient bloodline." The Stag King muttered in a low voice. But seeing that Zhu Mei didn't seem to care, he didn't say anything. "When will that rat come?" Zhu Mei suddenly asked. "I don't want to wait any longer. He should be here soon." The Stag King looked in another direction and smiled apologetically. "Although old demon Jifeng is skilled in wind travel, he's still a far cry from you. Looks like we'll have to wait a few more days. A light conjuring realm rat dares to call himself an old demon. What a joke. Zhu Mei really didn't care about old demon Jifeng. I really can't imagine why you're looking for him." Although his cultivation is low, he still walked step by step from the hair-shedding realm to where he is now. With his age, it's reasonable for him to call himself an old demon. The Stag King explained. "I invited him here because he knows wind travel. As far as I know, there's a requirement to enter the Cold Spirit Valley. My dear clan is skilled in plants and vegetation, but not wind travel. Otherwise, we wouldn't have kept this a secret. Zhu Mei didn't comment. She looked coldly at the hills in the distance. Suddenly, a very cold primary will swept over from afar, like a person's gaze unscrupulously prying into another's privacy. Who? Zhu Mei shouted angrily. The feather on her forehead suddenly exploded, and a similarly strong primary will rushed out. Puff, puff, puff. A series of explosive sounds rang out. It was as though a falling tide had met a rising tide. The sky was filled with shockwaves. These shockwaves were either high or low. The high shockwaves shot straight up into the sky. Under the impact of these powerful shockwaves, the red clouds that were gradually calming down once again turned into many whirlpools. Within the whirlpools, hurricanes were stirred up. It was a phenomenon of wind and clouds surging. Swoosh! Zhu Mei spread her wings, and between her scarlet feathers, orange flames shot up into the sky. It was as if Zhu Mei had suffered a small loss and was preparing to use her divine ability. Ayo! At the same time, a loud dragon roar sounded from where the primary will came from. The dragon roar seemed to contain anger. Who dares to challenge little king? An obscure and loud voice came from afar. A ray of blue light flew over, and a dragon that was dozens of feet long streaked across the sky. The dragon's aura was like an arrow, and the dragon's tail was like a scissor. It pounced towards Zhu Mei and King Stag. Of course it's me! Zhu Mei sneered. She spread her wings, turned into a ball of flame, and rushed out. Misunderstanding, misunderstanding! King Stag hurriedly shouted. At the same time, old monster Zhifeng's figure also appeared behind the aqua-blue dragon. He shouted in unison. It's a misunderstanding! A misunderstanding! What misunderstanding? Those who dare to attack little king, how can it be a misunderstanding? The blue dragon opened its mouth, and the heaven-earth yuan-chi within 100 feet became chaotic. It fell towards the dragon that was dozens of feet long, and a spike-like whirlpool instantly appeared in front of the blue dragon's head. -13. Chapter 3763. Little Prince, please wait. At this moment, a majestic voice sounded in the sky. Two figures flew over from behind old demon Jifeng. When they got closer, Stag King could see clearly that one was Ao Shuai, the inspector of the East Sea, and the other was dressed like a dragon general. He was taller than Ao Shuai, but Stag King didn't recognize his face. That voice came from this dragon general. Humph! The blue dragon seemed to be a little afraid of this dragon general. When it heard the voice, it coldly snorted and the light around its body faded away, turning into a humanoid figure. It stood there and looked provocatively at Zhu Mei, who hadn't transformed yet. Hee, Stag King Zhu Mei! Ao Shuai said as he flew. I'm late. Sorry. Well said. Stag King didn't dare to let Zhu Mei speak. He quickly bowed and said, I'm already very happy that the inspector came in time and brought helpers. I'm a king? Which Stag King are you? What right do you have to call yourself a king? Before Ao Shuai could say anything, the human figure of the blue dragon asked coldly. Stag King had heard the dragon general beside Ao Shuai call him Little Prince. He immediately smiled and said, Little Prince, of course I don't dare to call myself king in front of the dragon race. But in my stag race I'm considered a lord with over 100,000 miles of territory. Other demons call me king, so I can't disagree. But... That little prince wanted to say something, but the dragon general interrupted him. He stepped forward and cupped his hands. Mulu King, I'm Ao Zhan, the dragon guard of the East Sea Dragon Palace. This is my fourth prince's wife's brother, Ao Qian. This time, I accompanied the little prince out to train. I heard that Ao Shuai wanted to explore the Cold Spirit Valley, so I brought the little prince here. I hope you can forgive me for not informing you beforehand. Ha, I thought it was some little prince. So it's a relative of the East Sea Dragon Palace. How pitiful. Zhu Mei laughed when she heard that. How dare you? Ao Qian was furious. The water around him flashed as if he was about to attack again. Oh? I wonder, where did you come from? How dare you mock my East Sea Dragon Palace? Ao Zhan's face turned cold as he looked at Xu Mei indifferently. Even if he's a relative of the East Sea Dragon Palace, ordinary demons can't look up to him. Oh, this is Xu Mei of the Vermilion Bird Tribe's Scarlet Flame Branch. Stag King hurriedly smiled. He's a genius of our Thousand Beast sacred realm. He's only cultivated for 1,000 years, but he's already reached the moon-plucking realm. He's the demon with the highest chance of becoming a great sage in the Vermilion Bird clan. Humph, it's just advancing to the 5th level of origin energy in 1,000 years, what's the big deal? Such demons are everywhere in my dragon clan! Ao Qian snorted coldly, seemingly very unwilling to admit defeat. Xu Mei smiled and flapped her fiery wings. The dancing flames were just like the provocation in her eyes. Other dragons are other dragons, not you. If you're not convinced, you can come and compare. Hee, why wouldn't I dare? Ao Qian was eager to try, and the water blue color around him gradually thickened. So it's Xu Mei. Flying Feather and I Kong Great Sage came to the East Sea Dragon Palace many years ago. My Dragon King once hosted a banquet to welcome her. When I was waiting outside the main hall, I heard the Great Sage praising you. Ao Zhan smiled. Oh? Xu Mei's withered yellow eyes turned quickly, and there was shock in her eyes. The Flying Feather and I Kong Great Sage was no ordinary demon. She was one of the 6 great sages of the Thousand Beast sacred realm, and she was ranked 3rd among the 6 great sages. She was 2 ranks higher than the Scarlet Flame Vermilion Bird of the Vermilion Bird clan. How could she not be surprised? Flying Feather Great Sage. Xu Mei hurriedly lowered her voice and said respectfully, Why did you mention me? Ao Zhan didn't hide anything and said word by word. The saint only evaluated these 7 words and said that if you can achieve the first 2 words, you will be able to devour the sun within 2,000 years. If you can achieve the 4th word, you will be able to conquer the heavens within 5,000 years. If you can achieve the 7th word, you will be able to devour the sky and become a saint within 10,000 years. Hiss! When Ao Zhan said this, all the demons were shocked. The cultivation of demons was not as good as that of humans. Not only were their lifespans longer than humans, but they also had a harder time cultivating. For humans, whether it was Taoism, Confucianism, or Buddhism, it would take them 50 to 60,000 years to cultivate from level 1 to level 9. However, for demons, it would take them more than 100,000 years to cultivate from hair shedding, wisdom opening, light gathering, star picking, moon swallowing, sky swallowing, and finally sky swallowing to become a great sage. In particular, the beginning of human cultivation was the most difficult. Towards the end, although it became more and more difficult, there would always be a trace of opportunity that prevented people from feeling despair. As for Yao cultivation, the beginning was very simple. This was especially true for Xu Mei, who had an ancient bloodline. She could reach the enlightening and light conjuring realms right after she started cultivating. However, once she reached the moon-plucking realm, the sun-devouring realm and the sky-conjuring realm were like 2 heavenly moats. Without 10,000 years of cultivation and accumulation, it was impossible to break through. Sky swallowing required even more opportunity to become a great sage. It was not something that could be achieved through cultivation. With Xu Mei's enviable talent, it was possible for her to reach the moon-picking realm within 1,000 years. However, just as Ao Qian had said, there were many dragons with such talent. However, sun swallowing within 2,000 years and sky swallowing within 5,000 years was still under the condition of achieving mind closing. There was no need for opportunity at all. This was impossible in the eyes of other demons. As for the last 3 words, Heaven's Secret, it shocked all the demons so much that their eyeballs almost fell out. Other demons needed 100,000 years of accumulation to become a great sage, and this was still dependent on opportunity. Under the same conditions, Xu Mei could actually become a great sage within 20,000 years. This was such an evaluation. Ao! General Ao! Stag King stuttered. Great Sage Feather, became a great sage within 80,000 years, right? Yes. Aojan smiled. At that time, my Dragon King also said the same thing. He did not believe it either, but the great sage just smiled and did not explain. This? Why didn't I know about it? Zhu Mei asked in a low voice in ecstasy. If not for the Dragon Clan, who would know about the matters of the Dragon Palace? Aojan replied proudly. However, the Dragon King did not issue an edict regarding your matter. I believe there is no need to hide it. Thank you, General Ao. Zhu Mei bowed respectfully. In his heart, he understood that this was the Dragon Palace's goodwill. These words were enough to save him thousands of years or even hundreds of thousands of years of trouble. Ah, congratulations, fellow Immortal Zhu. Old Demon Jifeng sighed and cupped his hands. When I heard this, I felt jealous and envious. I have cultivated bitterly for 2,000 years and am only in the light conjuring realm. I have just touched the threshold of the planet star. As for moon plucking and sun swallowing, I do not even dare to think about it. Perhaps one day when I am still struggling in the planet star, fellow Immortal Zhu will have already become a great sage. Hee, fellow Immortal Jifeng, you are overthinking. Everyone has their own destinies. I merely borrowed the power of my bloodline. I can't compare to fellow Immortal's steady cultivation, taking one step at a time. Zhu Mei was in a good mood. She didn't hesitate to talk about fellow Immortal and her. That's right. Ao Shuai glanced at Ao Qian, who had a strange expression, and hurriedly blocked him. He said to old Demon Jifeng, Look at your cultivation, fellow Immortal Jifeng. Last time, you were in the light conjuring realm and only in the upper middle of the 4th stage of essence energy. After not seeing you for a few years, aren't you also on the verge of the planet star? When you come out of the cold Spirit Valley, even if you did not receive any rewards, you should be able to reach the middle of the 5th stage of essence energy if you assimilate the bloodline you obtained, right? What does this little bit of improvement count for? How can it be compared to all of you? Old Demon Jifeng's face showed a trace of excitement as he hurriedly waved his hand. Then, the demons chatted for a while, and the tense atmosphere gradually dissipated. Stag King looked at the demons, cleared his throat, and raised his hand. Everyone, please look. The 5 hills in front of you are the entrance to the Cold Spirit Valley. After entering, it will be the place where my ancient demon race tempered their bodies. According to the inheritance I obtained, there is an ancient star-gathering demon formation inside. The star energy is extremely abundant, and there is no impurity of the world's origin energy, or noble qi. Using it to temper one's body is 10 times stronger than outside. Moreover, this training is divided into several stages. Every stage will have a corresponding reward, whether it is an inheritance fragment, or a pure bloodline, which can allow our cultivation to reach a higher level. How come this king does not know of such a mysterious place? Ao Qian asked coldly. Ahem. Ao Zhan coughed and smiled. Young king, whether it is the 1,000 demons sacred realm, the hidden immortal continent, or the pure land, there are many ancient demon race ruins. My dragon race. Perhaps it is a little different from the vermilion bird race or the deer race. These inheritances may be a little lacking, so it is normal that young king does not know. Looking at the unconvinced Ao Qian, the Stag King smiled bitterly in his heart. The unruly Zhu Mei was already hard enough. Now, with Ao Qian, whose temper was on par with Zhu Mei's, he didn't know if this trip would go smoothly. However, since he was already here, he had to follow the plan. After all, these 2 demons. He could not afford to offend them. Ao Qian snorted and looked up at the sky. The red clouds there had started to snow again. I have already mentioned this place to old Demon Jifeng and Ao Shuai. Stag King said again. Us 3 demons and Zhu Mei have all searched for the ruins. However, the specific way to enter. Who? Just as Stag King was about to say the way to enter, Ao Qian suddenly roared. His body turned into a blue light and rushed out. In a few breaths, he flew hundreds of feet. Ao Qian's target was the surging river in the distance. Before his body landed, A cluster of blue crystal thread shot out from the demon chi and hit the river thousands of feet away. Boom! The river water split apart and emitted a loud roar. Gravel that was 1,000 feet in size flew up from the river bank. 2 water beasts that were dozens of feet long and 10 feet long were blown away by the crystal thread. When the corpses of the water beasts landed on the shore, they were riddled with holes and specks of blood. How could they still have any aura? At the same time, thank you to Flowing Watery and other fellow Taoists for their support. Today, I wish all of you good luck and great success in the year of the goat. -13. Chapter 3764. When Stag King and the others saw this, their expressions changed slightly. Xu Mei sneered and said, "Little Prince, you've killed these 2 upstream beasts. Who knows who ordered them to come here? These 2 things were found by me. I can do whatever I want with them." Ao Qian didn't care about Xu Mei at all. "Stag King, did these upstream beasts follow you?" Xu Mei glanced at Ao Qian and turned to ask Stag King. Stag King shook his head and said hesitantly, "I don't think so. I already checked the surroundings when I came." "Check again." Ao Zhan flew into the air without saying anything. His body flashed with golden light as he released his Yuan will. "Okay." Ao Shuai also agreed. "No matter who they came with, we'll go check it out first. According to Stag King, no one can enter without his inheritance and demon weapon. Let's take advantage of the break and go in." "Okay." Xu Mei also spread her wings and flew around the hills. All the demons went in different directions and checked for more than 1,000 miles. They didn't find anything, so they returned. Stag King didn't dare to delay. He quickly took out a piece of beast skin and handed it to old demon Jifeng. "Immortal friend Jifeng, take a look. This contains some secrets of my stag clan's inheritance. It should be related to entering Cold Spirit Valley." Old demon Jifeng's face flushed red. Although he was extremely arrogant in front of Xiaohua, when facing Ao Shuai, he was no longer imposing. Now that he met Ao Qian and Xu Mei again, he was even more cautious. He really couldn't compare to these heaven's favored ones in any aspect. Now that Stag King took out a piece of beast skin and let him take a look, his vanity swelled. "This?" Old demon Jifeng was slightly reserved and said humbly, "I didn't know immortal friend Zhu and immortal friend Ao were coming, so I tried to be brave. Now that the 2 of you are here, I don't dare to embarrass myself. Please take a look first." Stag King frowned. Old demon Jifeng was right. After all, Xu Mei, Ao Qian, and Ao Zhan were the strongest. Some things should be decided by them. But the problem was, to enter the Cold Spirit Valley, one needed the art of wind travel. King Mu Lu had already discussed this with old demon Jifeng. Now that he proposed to let the 2 demons have a look, rather than saying that he was being modest, it was better to say that he was showing off. Sure enough, without waiting for the Stag King to speak, Xu Mei said coldly, "Little mouse, what do you mean? If you don't want to enter, then scram." Ao Qian laughed maniacally at Xu Mei's words. "Ha ha, if this king sees it, you'll have to tuck your tail between your legs and follow behind this king." Fortunately, the 2 demons didn't directly force him to hand over the beast's skin. That old demon Jifeng smiled apologetically and said, Yes, I made a mistake. I'll check it now." Looking at old monster Jifeng's rat-like appearance, the Stag King was both angry and amused. He thought to himself, "A rat is a rat. Even if it has cultivated for 10,000 years, it is still a rat." They had never heard of a rat becoming a saint in the 1,000 demons' sacred realm. This is not only related to the bloodline, but also to the temperament. Although old demon Jifeng looked wretched, his strength was indeed very strong. He only released his primordial thought for a moment, and his small rat-like eyes were filled with doubt. Holding the beast skin, he asked curiously, "King Mulu, is it that simple? What we discussed before didn't seem to be just that. Fellow Immortal, what you want to do is that simple." The Stag King smiled and said, "When I was discussing with fellow Immortal, This king didn't know that there would be other immortal friends coming. Old demon Jifeng looked slightly disappointed and handed the beast's skin to the Stag King. Zhu Mei, young prince, General Ao, inspector, entering the Cold Spirit Valley requires the help of 4 fellow immortal friends. This is the beast's skin that this king has just prepared. With that, the Stag King took out 4 more beast skins and handed them to the 4 demons. After the 4 demons took them, he said, "This king originally thought that it would be difficult for the inspector, old demon Jifeng, and the 3 of us to open the barrier of the Cold Spirit Valley, so I invited Zhu Mei. Since young prince and General Ao are here, this king has full confidence that we can go in." Okay, Ao Shui took the beast skin and looked at Ao Zhan and Ao Qian. He nodded and looked at it. In just a moment, the 4 demons finished looking at it. Zhu Mei said coldly, "This barrier of the Cold Spirit Valley requires our essence blood. I need to think about whether we should go in or not." The Stag King smiled bitterly. He knew very well that humans and demons both needed essence blood to cultivate, but demons were different from humans. In order to break the barrier and refine magic treasures, Taoist cultivators could spit out large amounts of essence blood. The essence blood used for refining could be replenished in a short period of time. However, the Yao clan was different. The inheritance of the Yao clan lay in their bloodline. Not to mention large amounts of blood essence, they did not even dare to waste a single strand of blood essence. This was because even a strand of blood essence would require many years of cultivation to make up for. This was even more so for high-level demons like Zhu Mei. If there weren't enough benefits, Zhu Mei wouldn't waste her essence blood for nothing. "Zhu Mei, I don't know what's inside. It's up to you," the Stag King said calmly. "If you don't go, old demon Jifeng's essence blood should be useful." "Damn it, isn't it just a drop of essence blood? Can't you just use the blood glory ginseng? Don't tell me your Vermilion Bird clan doesn't have such a treasure." Ao Qian was unhappy and shouted. Zhu Mei's eyes flashed with anger. She glanced at the 3 generals of the Dragon Palace and said, "There are many treasures in the Dragon Palace, but there are also many prodigals. Damn it." Blue water rushed out from Ao Qian's dragon horn. He was about to get angry. "Young prince, please wait." Ao Zhan quickly stopped him and asked, "Zhu Mei, do you have other ideas?" Zhu Mei didn't neglect Ao Zhan. She nodded and said, "That's right. If I have to waste my essence blood to enter Cold Spirit Valley, I might as well return to the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm and explore Mount Cass Demon. Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? You think you can enter Mount Cass Demon?" Ao Qian immediately shouted, "If you want to bargain, why don't you find a good reason?" "Shut up." Ao Qian turned around and said, "If you don't want to go in, I'll accompany you back to the East Sea Dragon Palace." "Don't." Ao Qian hurriedly smiled and said, "I haven't had enough fun yet. Why would I return to the lifeless bottom of the sea?" "Well, since you don't want to go back now, then, please listen to my arrangements." Whatever. Ao Qian put away the blue water and took a few steps back. He raised his claws and looked into the distance. Ao Zhan looked at Zhu Mei and said, "Actually, I have the same idea as you. It doesn't matter whether we go in or not." Moreover, this general had no intention of obtaining any benefits from it. It was only because of the little prince's experience that I followed along. I can't guarantee that I can make up for the essence blood you used. But when I think about how Cold Spirit Valley was where the ancient demons went to experience it, to be honest, I'm also curious. Although my dragon race has left the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm, in ancient times, my dragon race was also part of the demon race. I'd like to see what kind of opportunities there are. Focus, concentrate. I understand. Although Ao Zhan didn't say those words, Zhu Mei realized something when she saw Ao Zhan's gaze. She nodded and said, "Maybe I can learn something from the experience?" "I don't know." Ao Zhan shook his head. "How about this?" Stag King struck while the iron was hot and said with a smile, "Let's not talk about what we get in Cold Spirit Valley based on our own opportunities. I'll give you half of what we get together. How about that? If that's the case, Zhu Mei glanced at the 3 demons of the Dragon Palace and finally nodded. All right. Seeing Zhu Mei agree, the Stag King was overjoyed. However, he still carefully glanced at Ao Zhan and Ao Qian. After all, the 2 demons were not included in the previous discussion. Now that he added more to Zhu Mei, who knew what the 2 demons would think? Fortunately, it seemed that Ao Zhan really brought Ao Qian here for experience, and didn't care about what they got together. Thus Stag King hurriedly said, If that's the case, let's do it now. Okay. When the demons heard that, they all put away their beast skins and urged their demon clouds to fly to the 5 hills. When the 5 demons stood still on the 5 hills, old demon Ji-Foam urged his wind escape and soared into the sky for more than 10,000 feet. Let's do it. Seeing that they stood still according to the previous discussion, Stag King carefully checked his memory again. After confirming that there were no mistakes, he spoke. Although Zhu Mei and Ao Qian were arrogant and unruly, they did not dare to be negligent in the face of the ancient barrier. Hearing the Stag King's words, they turned around and faced the 5 faintly discernible beast heads on the hill. Pooh! The 5 demons opened their mouths at the same time and spat out a mouthful of essence blood. Wang! Once the essence blood came out, there was no need to use any demon technique. 5 thin rays of starlight and moonlight fell from the sky into the essence blood. The entire essence blood swelled rapidly as if it was boiling. Then, 5 hurricanes rolled up a whirlpool above the essence blood and countless chi of heaven and earth swarmed in. The power of the stars and moonlight couldn't be seen with the naked eye, but the hurricanes could see the difference in the essence blood of the 5 demons. Stag King's essence blood was the color of dead wood. In the thumb-sized drop of blood, a blurry antler could be faintly seen. The hurricane above the drop of blood was the size of a fist. Although Ao Shui, Ao Qian, and Ao Zhan were all dragons, their essence blood was different. Ao Shui's essence blood was earthy yellow, and also had a blurry dragon head. The hurricane above it was also the size of a fist. Ao Qian's essence blood was water blue, and the dragon head inside was extremely clear. Even the dragon horn could be seen clearly. Of course, the hurricane above it was also close to a foot long. Ao Zhan's essence blood was more strange. It was silver white, and not only did it have a dragon head, but it also had a dragon body. However, when Ao Zhan spat out the essence blood, he blocked it with his body. He even slightly raised his hand and shrunk the 3-foot hurricane to half a foot long. Zhu Mei's essence blood was very arrogant. It was actually a ball of scarlet flame. Moreover, this flame was in the shape of a vermilion bird. The hurricane that rushed into the essence blood was also more than 3 feet long. Oh! Zhu Mei didn't care about her own essence blood. She was closest to Ao Zhan and inadvertently glanced at the hurricane that had just shrunk. She was shocked. Why is Ao Zhan's blood so pure? Could it be that he... -13. Chapter 3765. However, seeing that Ao Zhan, Ao Qian, and Ao Shui had their backs facing each other, Zhu Mei immediately retracted her gaze. The secret of the Dragon Palace. Even someone as strong as Zhu Mei didn't want to get involved. Puff puff puff. Zhu Mei retracted her gaze and spat out several mouthfuls of demonic energy. Then, she flapped her wings and flames fell into it. The entire essence blood slowly rotated, and the shape of the vermilion bird gradually turned into a strange talisman. It was very similar to the talisman on Xiaohua's white bones. Since Zhu Mei made her move, the other 4 demons naturally began to move as well. The talismans of the 3 dragons were very similar, but the Stag King's was different. Move! Seeing that the talisman was already clearly visible, the Stag King shouted. Zhu Mei and the others pushed their arms at the same time, and 5 talismans made of essence blood rushed towards the beast heads of the 5 hills. Shwa! The essence blood fell into the stone walls of the hills, but there was no movement. In just a moment, boom! The 5 hills shook at the same time, as if the mountains were collapsing and the earth was cracking. The earth was also shaking, and the 5 hills were actually pulled out from the ground. Patches of moss were cut off from the hills, and huge rocks rolled down from the top of the hills. Layers of bloody light spread over the hills, and the originally blurry beast heads on the hills became abnormally clear. Moreover, under the uprooted hills, the bodies of the strange beasts were revealed. Just as the bodies of the 5 strange beasts were revealed. Ayo 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 ayo. 5 beastly roars resounded from the 5 stone walls that had already formed the mountain peaks. Immediately, the phantoms of the 5 strange beasts came out of the walls, and the red clouds that filled the sky instantly rolled away. 5 pillars of light that were invisible to the naked eye penetrated through the gaps of the 5 clouds, directly covering the phantoms. 5 abnormally fierce and desolate auras rushed out of the phantoms, not only making the 5 demons unstable, but also spreading out in all directions like a tide. Amazing! Ju Mei's body flashed with flames, and her eyelidless eyes were filled with ecstasy. She stared at the phantoms without blinking. As an expert of the demon clan, it was very easy for her to capture the indescribable aura of an expert from the phantoms. Ju Mei was like this, and in the sky, old demon Ji Feng's entire body was trembling. This kind of trembling was both afraid and excited. The aura of the phantoms was the power that he had dreamed of for thousands of years. Roar! After a few breaths, the 5 phantoms simultaneously roared towards the sky, and each rushed towards the center. Boom! The 5 phantoms collided together. There was no soaring chi, but tens of thousands of starlight fragments. These fragments were like withered leaves in front of the demons'. Immediately, totems and shadows and totems were produced, flashing and flickering from the fragments. Ju Mei and the others, the 9 dragons' body were dazzling. The 9 dazzled their eyes. And the 9 dragons its 9 claws dazzled this. And there was the head. Were the 9 claws of this, and this to them, it. This is primeval dragon! Ao Qian, Ao Zhan, and Ao Shui were dumbfounded. Primeval dragon, the ancestor of the dragon clan. They didn't know how many legends they had heard about the origin of the dragon clan, but they had never seen the primeval dragon's appearance in the dragon palace. They hadn't even seen the primeval dragon's totem in their memories. What did this mean? No one knew better than them what kind of experience they were about to face. Heavenly Phoenix? The primeval dragon's totem flashed and disappeared. Then, a phoenix with a sharp beak, slender eyes, and 7 colored feathers appeared in the totem. This phoenix's eyes were filled with incomparable arrogance. Ju Mei's body trembled. She was even more surprised than the 3 dragons. Then, the totems of the primeval demon clan's ancestors appeared one after another. Among them, there were some that the demons knew. In the end, each of the totems shocked the demons because these totems were beyond their knowledge. The 6 demons knew in their hearts that these ancient, almighty, and peerless experts might have been annihilated in the torrent of time. Other than the totems left behind from the ancient times, even some legends had disappeared. Dear! Suddenly, a totem similar to the Stag King appeared in the nebula. Ju Mei couldn't help but cry out. Stag King, is this? Yes, this is the totem in this king's inheritance. The Stag King was shocked and immediately realized. Seeing that the Stag King's totem was about to disappear, the Stag King shouted. He didn't dare to slow down. He waved his hand and took out something that looked like an antler from the heaven and earth bracelet on his arm. He hurriedly threw it, and the antler rushed into the Stag King's horn on the totem. Although the antler didn't completely match the one on the totem, and there was still an inch-long gap on the totem, the entire totem stopped. Then, the totem rapidly transformed into the shape of a huge cauldron and fell towards the river below. Boom! Water light rose from the sky, and the earth shook violently again. Countless rocks were torn apart, and a black hole that was dozens of feet in size appeared in the middle of the water pillar. Woo! A huge stream of air rushed into the sky and blew towards old demon Jifeng, who was calmly standing thousands of feet in the sky. GG! At this moment, old demon Jifeng was filled with pride. He opened his mouth and cried out a few times. He turned into a breeze and entered the stream of air, going against the current. "Everyone, please don't rush in." The Stag King saw that old demon Jifeng had entered the stream of air and was flying towards the black hole. He hurriedly shouted, "This is the enchantment of the Cold Spirit Valley. If you don't have the wind travel technique, you can't enter. Everyone, please don't try." If it was a normal situation, why would Zhu Mei and Ao Qian care? However, after seeing the primordial dragon and heavenly phoenix, no matter how arrogant they were, they didn't dare to touch this restriction that they didn't know how powerful it was. Old demon Jifeng's progress was very smooth. In a short moment, he had already reached the side of the black hole. As old demon Jifeng stood in front of the black hole, "Woo!" a whimper was heard. The totem and light disappeared, turning into tens of thousands of stars and falling towards the 5 mountains. At the same time, the 5 mountains slowly fell towards the ground. "Go!" the Stag King shouted. His figure flew out first and fell into the black hole. In fact, there was no need for the Stag King's reminder. The other 4 demons had already retracted their figures and followed the Stag King into the black hole. Boom! When the 6 demons rushed into the black hole fell along with the mountains and slowly closed. The water that rushed into the sky suddenly fell, and the entire river covered the black hole. However, when everything calmed down, a huge whirlpool appeared on the surging river. It didn't disappear for a long time. Strangely, not long after, Ao Shuai's figure actually peeked out of the whirlpool. He looked left and right, then shrank back. When he reappeared, it was Ao Shuai and the Stag King again. Looking at the whirlpool below him, the Stag King smiled bitterly. "Inspector, this entrance isn't completely closed. I'm afraid it's because this king's token is missing. However, the entrance is still gradually shrinking. I think it won't be long before it completely closes." "All right." Ao Shuai's yuan was swept and nodded. "Since it's a place for us demons to train, others might not know. Let's hurry down." Then, the 2 demons disappeared again. Half a day later, the whirlpool shrank by half again. Suddenly, boom! Zhu Mei and Ao Zhan rushed out of the whirlpool. As soon as the 2 demons appeared, they immediately swept out with their yuan wills. In the time it took to eat a meal, the 2 demons retracted their yuan wills and looked at each other. Knowing that there were no humans or demons here, they didn't say anything and rushed into the whirlpool and disappeared. Below the whirlpool was the black hole that was still a few feet wide. The 2 demons rushed into the black hole, their bodies slightly distorted and instantly elongated like long branches. This figure swam in a long, colorful passage. When it condensed again, Zhu Mei and Ao Zhan's eyes lit up. The 2 demons rushed out of a fist-sized crack. At this time, the crack was on the ground, and the river water that emitted a strange smell was spurting out from this crack. "How is it? Did the 2 of you find any clues?" the Stag King hurriedly asked when he saw the 2 demons appear. "No." Ao Zhan looked at the huge trees and rocks around him and answered. "It's the same as when we came in. No demons came." "So?" the Stag King nodded. "Only the 2 water beasts followed us, and no other demons?" "Of course." Zhu Mei looked at the floating antlers in the sky and said, "You can take this token. See if you can close the entrance." "Wait a moment." The Stag King was uncertain. "If I take the token, we might be teleported away again. Won't the entrance be open for other demons to enter?" "Enter my ass!" Ao Qian was already impatient. Looking at the vast wilderness and the 9 suns and stars in the sky, he shouted, "Hurry up and take the token. I'm still waiting for my training, young prince." Ao Zhan reminded him in a low voice. Rumble. Suddenly the sound of thunder could be heard from afar, and it was getting closer and closer. Thunder Flood Dragon. Damn it, it's a Thunder Flood Dragon. Zhu Mei scanned with her essence will and saw a 200 feet long flood dragon with lightning flashing around its body. It was flying towards them like lightning. She couldn't help but moan. This Thunder Flood Dragon has the power to swallow the sun. Why isn't there any essence will? The demons were shocked and released their essence wills. Old demon Jifeng couldn't help but exclaim. Hurry up and leave. Our essence wills have already disturbed the Thunder Flood Dragon. Ao John hurriedly shouted. This Thunder Flood Dragon is an opponent for us to train with. The reason why it doesn't have any essence wills might be because it can't condense essence wills in this barrier. Go! Hurry up and leave! At this point, the Stag King didn't care if other demons entered. He reached out and immediately took the token in his hand. When his hoof-like hand touched the antler token, a cryptic message was transmitted from the antler. Ah! The Stag King was immediately stunned. An inconceivable ecstasy appeared on his face. -13. Chapter 3766. What's wrong? Zhu Mei hurriedly asked when she saw that the demons were not teleported away and the Deer King was so ecstatic. The Deer King took a deep breath and shouted. I'll let you know that this is indeed the Cold Spirit Valley used by the ancient demon clan for training. These demons, no, we can only call them demon beasts. They grew up in the Cold Spirit Valley and don't know how to cultivate. They don't have primordial thoughts. What? No primordial thoughts? The demons were overjoyed, but then old demon Jifeng shouted indignantly. Even if they don't have primordial thoughts, they don't have intelligence. No demon beasts that aren't even in the hair removal realm have the strength of the moon picking realm? Let's not talk about it. Let's go! Zhu Mei flapped her wings and flew up, shouting. Let's escape from the Thunder Flood Dragon first. That guy is already flying over. Let's go! Ao John raised his hand and a golden spear appeared in his hand. He hurriedly said, We'll discuss how to face the enemy as we go. The 6 demons no longer dared to pay attention to the water flow at the entrance, and hurriedly flew away on their demon clouds. In just a moment, the Thunder Flood Dragon flashed and fell. The Thunder Flood Dragon did not fall, but its violent aura scattered the water flow. The Thunder Flood Dragon stuck out its snake head and sniffed the water flow. Lightning flowed around its body as if it was about to rush into the entrance. Boom! A burst of star power exploded at the entrance, flipping the 200-feet-long Thunder Flood Dragon over. Streaks of blood even appeared on the Thunder Flood Dragon's scales. Roar! The Thunder Flood Dragon let out a sorrowful cry and flew in the direction that the Deer King and the others flew in. After half a day, the fist-sized entrance became smaller and smaller. The water flow that rushed out became smaller and smaller. However, it was also much higher. At this moment, a white light flashed in the water. 2 ferocious-looking dragon figures appeared in the water. Swoosh! At this moment, a white light flashed in the water and 2 more ferocious dragon figures appeared in the water. However, as soon as these 2 dragons appeared, they immediately flew to the sides and did not stop at all. When the 2 dragons landed in the air, they looked at each other, and then at the situation around them. They were really confused. One of them said, Jiangpeng, is this the Cold Spirit Valley? I don't know. The dragon named Jiangpeng shook his head slightly. There is no record of the Cold Spirit Valley in our clan. I only learned about it from the messages of the 2 water beasts. However, now is not the time to pursue the matter. Let's avoid it first and familiarize ourselves with it before acting according to the plan. It seems that what we discussed earlier was not like this. The dragon shook his head slightly. We didn't have to come in, Jiangche. When we came out, the elder had already said that you must listen to me. We must act according to the situation. Previously, the dragon bones didn't even stir up trouble between the Dragon Palace and Zhai Xinglu. Now we have to make up for our mistakes. Jiangping waved his claws. His body was almost crawling on the ground as he swam far away. The dragon named Jiangche felt very helpless. He could only lie down and swim along. Although the 2 dragons were supported by floating clouds, Jiangche still glared fiercely at the gradually falling water and the gradually shrinking entrance. The entrance to the Cold Spirit Valley had already been sealed. No human or demon would be able to enter anymore. Moreover, as the 2 dragons swam, a strange color emerged from their scales. This color gradually diffused around the two dragons. The two dragons had already fused with their surroundings. It was hard to see any dragon shape. It was as if the two dragons had mysteriously disappeared. Putting aside the fact that the demons had flown into the cold spirit valley to train, just as Xiaohua and Fu Jiwen were about to move, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat again. He whispered, "Don't rush!" Ah? Fu Jiwen was stunned. He clearly remembered that 3 years ago, when Xiaohua had just agreed under his urging, Xiaohua mysteriously went into seclusion. Fu Jiwen also mysteriously practiced. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. And now, it was the same again. Fu Jiwen looked at Xiaohua strangely. He did not know why. "Come here quickly!" Xiaohua hurried to the cloud bed. As he walked, he said, "Disciple, think carefully. Before we entered the Misty Mountain maze, did you think that the 4 layers of formations were already very powerful? Did you not think that there were 2 layers of maze in this formation?" "Yes, master." Fu Jiwen nodded blankly. "Did you think that after the first layer of maze, the outer mansion would be Senior Tsang Langzi's cave residence? Did you not think that there would be a second layer of maze?" "Yes, master." "Then when you entered the outer mansion for the second time, did you think that you had gone the wrong way and would not step into the same cave entrance?" "Yes, master." "Then when you entered the inner mansion, did you think that there was nothing in the cave residence? Were you very disappointed?" "Yes, master." "When you got the ink cloud pupil and the elixir from the 2 caves, did you want to leave? Did you not think that there was a jade ri on the cloud bed?" "Yes, master." "And now, did you have some enlightenment and feel that there was nothing in the cave residence and want to leave?" "Yes, master, that's right." "So, the biggest secret hidden in Senior Tsang Langzi's cave residence was not what I got before. The biggest secret is on the cloud bed." "Ah? Master, why? I don't understand." Xiaohua smiled strangely and pointed to the cloud bed, saying, "It's very simple. Because I can't take the cloud bed away." "No way." What kind of reason is this?" Fu Jiwen cried, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Of course, this is the reason." Xiaohua's eyes flashed with excitement. He pointed to the empty cave residence and said, "The jade shelves, jade tables, jade chairs and so on in the cave residence can be moved. Why can't the cloud bed be moved? Moreover, according to what I just said, every time Senior Tsang Lungzi tried to hide something, it would only make it more conspicuous. Every discovery would be a pleasant surprise. This surprise was unexpected and joyful, which was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. When ordinary people came to Senior Tsang Langzi's cave residence, their ultimate goal was to get Senior Tsang Langzi's orthodoxy and the way of formation. But now, I boldly speculate that the most precious thing in this cave residence is definitely not Senior Tsang Langzi's enlightenment of Taoism, but something else." "Master." Fu Jiwen felt wronged and said, "Haven't I found Senior Tsang Langzi's orthodoxy? Didn't you gain some other enlightenment on the cloud bed? Isn't that the most precious thing?" "What's more precious?" He, my disciple, to tell you the truth, the orthodoxy you got was left by Tsang Langzi in ink cloud pupil. What I got is his real enlightenment, the crystallization of Taoism. But don't worry, when your cultivation is high enough, I will teach you." Xiaohua walked to the cloud bed with a smile. He looked at the huge cloud bed and said, "I'm really looking forward to it. You and I have gained a lot from the trip to Misty Mountain, but we still haven't found the most precious thing in the cave residence." "What is the most precious thing?" "It's something that Senior Tsang Langzi couldn't take away." "Master, you're so careful." Fu Jiwen was completely defeated by the money grubber Xiaohua. He followed behind Xiaohua and walked to the front of the cloud bed. He looked up and down, looked left and right, and even walked to the inside of the cloud bed to take a look. He was still confused. It was just a cloud bed. Who would think that there was some mystery inside? Xiaohua laughed and said, "Senior Tsang Langzi blocked his divine thought and Buddhist awareness in this cave residence because he didn't want others to find the secret of the cloud bed. Unfortunately, man proposes, God disposes. He didn't expect that I would come here thousands of years later. Yes, master. You cleaned Senior Tsang Langzi's cave residence so well. This is Senior Tsang Langzi's way of thanking you. Fu Jiwen replied with a bitter smile. But he was really impressed by Xiaohua's ability. Humph. Xiaohua released his soul awareness and carefully examined it. He snorted and said, "If you want Bayan to stay in the Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal, then don't talk nonsense." He, disciple was wrong. Fu Jiwen laughed. But his heart was moved. He hurriedly took off the wooden box from his neck and handed it to Xiaohua. "Master, since this is the most precious treasure in Tsang Langzi's cave residence, the restrictions inside must be the most powerful. Master should take this Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal. It might be useful. And that's a filial disciple." Xiaohua smiled and put it in his sleeve. "Don't worry. If there is an opportunity, Master will help you rescue Bayan. Thank you for everything, Master." Fu Jiwen jumped down from the cloud bed and said, "If there are any difficult restrictions, disciple won't go in. Disciple's magic power is weak. If I go, I'll be a burden to Master." "Oh? You're not too greedy. You know when to advance and when to retreat. You're much better than Master." Xiaohua was a little surprised. If it was him, he would risk his life to charge in. But then Xiaohua was stunned. He looked at Fu Jiwen with a smile and said, "Disciple, are you trying to persuade Master?" "A little." Fu Jiwen's smile disappeared and he respectfully said, "Master, disciple has followed Master into Tsang Langzi's cave residence. Along the way, disciple has gained a lot, far more than disciple expected. This is something that disciple didn't dare to imagine. If disciple has gained so much, then Master's gains must be far greater than disciple's. Disciple has been under Master's protection for a lot of time. I didn't see Master in any danger, but disciple can imagine Master's narrow escape. Master, the so-called luck will come to an end one day. Master has already obtained Tsang Langzi's orthodoxy. Why don't you quit while you're ahead?" He. Xiaohua looked at Fu Jiwen, who was worried about him, and his heart felt warm. He smiled and said, "Master's luck is far from what you know. Master's luck is comparable to the luck of a country, comparable to the luck of a province. Although the maze designed by Tsang Langzi is powerful, it is still nothing in Master's eyes." -13. Chapter 3767. "But Master..." Fu Jiwen still wanted to say more, but Xiaohua continued, "Master's knowledge is very complex, and you can't imagine it. Senior Tsang Langzi seems to be similar to Master, and Senior Tsang Langzi's cave is the biggest opportunity Master has encountered so far. In other words, after getting out of this misty mountain maze, Master doesn't need to look for other ancient ruins, as they are meaningless to Master. What's more, Master doesn't feel any sense of crisis, which means that the biggest secret hidden in this cave won't pose a threat to Master's life." "Okay." Fu Jiwen knew that he couldn't persuade Xiaohua, so he nodded and said, "Disciple can only say this: if Master insists on exploring, disciple can only wish Master a fruitful return. You don't have to wait here, you also have to follow Master." Xiaohua's words surprised Fu Jiwen. "Ah?" Fu Jiwen was surprised. "This is Tsang Langzi's cave. Since Huang Shou and others can come in, others can also come in. Especially since Master obtained Senior Tsang Langzi's orthodoxy, you and I have been in this cave for 3 whole years." Xiaohua said with a smile. "Jai Xingzi, Sun Kong, and Zhang Daoran were also trapped in the maze for 3 years. When Master came down from the cloud bed, there seemed to be some changes in this cave, and the maze might have disappeared, and these people could come in immediately. If they come in, Master won't be here, and only you are here. How will you answer other people's questions?" Fu Jiwen nodded. "Moreover, Master calculated that you would be more scared than in danger. Previously, with Fairy Su Ming's self-detonation, you were indeed in danger, but that little bit of danger couldn't be seen in Master's eyes. Master feels that you should still follow Master to broaden your horizons. After all, This kind of opportunity is not available to everyone, Xiaohua explained. Fu Jiwen knew that Xiaohua was protecting him, so how could he not know what was good for him? He hurriedly bowed and said, "Disciple, thanks, Master. You can stand on the side. First, let Master see what this restriction is." Xiaohua had already used his soul sense to clearly see that this cloud bed was not one with the stone wall. It was just that the cloud bed was extremely close to the stone wall. Relying solely on the naked eye, even a cultivator's naked eye would not be able to distinguish the two. What puzzled Xiaohua the most was that there was no magic power fluctuation coming from where the cloud bed came into contact with the stone wall. He also didn't find anything out of place with his soul sense. After Fu Jiwen moved aside, Xiaohua slapped his forehead. The illusion breaker eyes flashed with a dark green brilliance and opened. Si. When he saw that the stone wall before him was the same as before, Xiaohua was completely disappointed. He sucked in a breath of air and closed his eyes with his brows tightly furrowed. "That's impossible," Xiaohua thought to himself. "How could there be nothing wrong with this cloud bed? Could it be that Senior Tsung Lanzi had set up an empty fort strategy here? But even if it's an empty fort strategy, what is he trying to hide?" After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua's illusion breaker eyes slightly blinked. A silver-white ring of light rippled from his eyes. Xiaohua pushed his illusion breaker eyes to the limit. "Ha, here! Here!" Xiaohua looked for a moment, then finally laughed loudly. "So it was hidden so subtly. If it weren't for this Zhao's illusion breaker eyes and the Buddhist sect's heavenly eye, I'm afraid it really would be difficult to see this point of light that's even fainter than a needle's eye." Seeing Xiaohua laugh, Fu Jiwen was also stunned. With a tone of disbelief, he said, "Master, you really found something?" "Of course." Xiaohua withdrew his heavenly eye. With a flick of his Taoist robe, he used universe-concealing sleeves and laughed. "Take a look at Master's power! Rise!" This time was different from the previous probing. Xiaohua used 70% of his magic power. Unfortunately, the cloud bed didn't move under his big hand. It didn't even sway. This really made Xiaohua stunned. "That's impossible!" Xiaohua knew the power of his universe-concealing sleeves. With his current strength, not to mention a cloud bed that was several zhang in size, even a small mountain would collapse. This old man understands now. Suddenly, Xiaohua seemed to have thought of something. He hurriedly withdrew his magic power and urged the Heavenly Law's embodiment technique. A huge golden body flashed with a dark golden brilliance. At this time, Xiaohua grabbed the two sides of the cloud bed. Relying only on the strength of his body, he shouted, "Rise, boom!" The cloud bed was like a 10,000 jin mountain that was slowly lifted by Xiaohua. As the cloud bed was lifted, the entire Immortal cave trembled. It was as if Xiaohua was lifting the entire cloud mountain. As it trembled, that cloud bed had only moved to a height of a few feet. Woo! A fishy wind blew out from under the cloud bed, enveloping Xiaohua's golden body and the wide-eyed Fu Jiwen at the side. A force so strong that even Xiaohua was unable to resist was generated. Without the slightest fluctuation of magic power, without the slightest splendor, the two people strangely disappeared just like that. Boom! The cloud bed fell. The entire cloud mountain shook. Every cultivator that stepped into the Immortal cave also slightly swayed. In the blink of an eye, Xiaohua and Fu Jiwen's feet landed on the ground. The scene in front of them changed greatly. Xiaohua didn't have time to withdraw his golden body. He immediately released his soul sense to explore. It was a space that was hundreds of feet wide. The walls of the space were covered with thick murals. On the murals, there were mountains and rivers, strange beasts and giants, vast forests, and vast yellow sands. However, there were no ordinary people in the murals. There were also no towns or villages. Xiaohua's soul sense only roughly looked at these murals that were filled with a primitive aura. He left his soul sense at the end of this space. That place was 100 zhang in size altar. The altar was in the shape of a hill. Rugged bones were placed on top of it. Bloody and abnormal totems were smeared on the altar. These totems were very strange. Some were in the shape of flames, some were in the shape of glaciers, and some were in the shape of strange beasts. Even when they reached the top of the altar, there were skeletons, leg bones, ghosts, and other unimaginable shapes. Ouch! Just as Xiaohua was looking at the altar again, Fu Jiwen suddenly screamed from the side. What's wrong? Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand, and a seal was placed around Fu Jiwen. Fu Jiwen curled up on the ground in pain. He lowered his voice and groaned. Master, disciple, used my soul sense to explore these murals. Countless images rushed into disciple's mind. Disciple can't bear it, and now I have a splitting headache. All right, you should take a rest. Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror and put Fu Jiwen into it. He looked at the murals around him. He didn't release his soul sense, but still used his soul sense to check the altar. After Xiaohua finished looking at the last few strange totems, his soul sense fell on the top of the altar. It was an oval platform about a foot in size. There was a groove on it, and in the groove, there was a shabby oil lamp. Isn't this the shabby oil lamp that I obtained in Sky Patrol City? Isn't this the soul tool from Million Ming Mountains? How did it appear here? Xiaohua was stunned when he saw the oil lamp. He hurriedly waved his hand and took out the oil lamp that he had forgotten in the corner of the space. Sure enough, although there were some slight differences in the style of the two oil lamps, they were the same in terms of texture and general style. No, this isn't a soul tool, Xiaohua suddenly realized. At that time, the cultivator said that this was an item from the 10,000 demon realm. He took it from a soul cultivator. Could this altar be related to the 10,000 demon realm? But even if it is related to the 10,000 demon realm, what's the use of this altar? Xiaohua was completely confused. Sun Longzi is our Dao Sex Tribulation Stage Senior. What does he mean by hiding such an altar in his cave residence? Could it be that Senior Sun Longzi is related to the 10,000 demon realm? Then Xiaohua recalled again. It seemed that Sun Longzi didn't have any records about this altar. Maybe it's recorded in the ink cloud pupil? Xiaohua thought for a moment, and took out the ink cloud pupil that Fu Jiwen took. After a little hesitation, he looked at it again. However, Xiaohua didn't expect that the ink cloud pupil didn't have any records at all. This is one of Sun Longzi's biggest secrets. Xiaohua put away the ink cloud pupil and narrowed his eyes. He looked at the strange altar thoughtfully. After a few minutes, Xiaohua temporarily moved his soul consciousness and eyes away from the altar and released his divine sense to explore the murals around him. Boom, boom, boom. Sure enough, as Fu Jiwen said, when Xiaohua's divine sense came into contact with the murals, vivid images fell into Xiaohua's mind like giant meteors. The impact made Xiaohua's blood vessels expand. Huh! This is also a kind of test? After Xiaohua finished looking at some of the murals gave off a strange light. Correspondingly, a totem on the altar flashed and had a faint color. Bloodline power? Looking at the murals one by one, Xiaohua discovered that they were all pictures of ancient times. Furthermore, every time an ancient picture entered his mind, Xiaohua's bloodline would be stimulated, and an indescribable power would gradually be born around Xiaohua's body. When Xiaohua finished looking at all of the murals, a desolate, boundless, and even bloody aura rushed out from the altar and filled the entire space. Could this altar be the remains of a soul cultivator? Xiaohua looked at the altar that seemed to have come to life, his eyes narrowing and narrowing. Although his soul cultivation was not shallow, he was still a little nervous when faced with the mysterious remains of a soul cultivator. But if I want to know if the Dawn Rain continent and the other 3 continents are in the same realm, I might have to take a trip to the remains of a soul cultivator. Maybe I can even find the passage to the Million Ming Mountains. With that thought in mind, Xiaohua looked at the oil lamp in his hand and waved it toward the altar. Unfortunately, when the oil lamp fell, the altar didn't move. -13. Chapter 3768. Lamp oil! Xiaohua suddenly woke up and hurriedly took down the oil lamp and put a drop of lamp oil into it. After seeing that there was still no reaction from the lamp oil, he waved his hand and a strand of spirit fire flew up to the altar and landed on the oil lamp. Swoosh! The spirit fire lit up the quaint oil lamp. Aoo! Under the light of the fire, the oil lamp trembled slightly as if it was alive. Strange runes bloomed from the outer layer of the oil lamp, and then a strange beast with 7 colors appeared from the oil lamp. 7 light beast? Xiaohua looked at the familiar runes and then looked at the strange beast. He was almost dumbfounded. He didn't know about the 7 light beasts before, but there were some marks in Little White's memory. It was a rare soul beast in the 10,000 demon realm. It was said that each of the lights of the 7 light beasts could cause different damage to the soul of a demon, or a human. He didn't expect that the oil lamp was actually a 7 light beast. The 7 light beasts let out a desolate groan, and the 7-colored brilliance fell from the altar like a whirlpool. Every time it passed by a totem, the totem would turn into a strange beast. Even the totem that was difficult to understand turned into a strange beast that Little White had never seen before. When all the totems were lit up, all the strange beasts flew out of their totems and circled around the altar. Then, a loud sound of a bugle horn came from the altar. Following the sound of the bugle horn, the strange beasts transformed into all kinds of strange shapes and swam in the air. These shapes were somewhat ordinary, such as triangular, square, and some were more strange, like swimming fish and hedgehogs. Xiaohua was somewhat baffled. However, when a strange beast's mouth appeared in the air, and then a shape that looked like a square but wasn't a square, and under the square shape, there were 4 legs. Xiaohua was very lucky and a flash of light appeared in his mind. Serene Ding? This is the entrance to the legacy world. Xiaohua almost screamed out. Wasn't that strange beast's mouth the same as the one that appeared when he sacrificially refined the Serene Ding in the sword tomb? Wasn't that the shape of a cauldron? Wasn't this 7-colored brilliance Serene Ding's 7 colors? Xiaohua was ecstatic. He never thought that he would encounter the entrance to the legacy world here. At this time, there was only one question in his mind. Song Lang. Who is he? However, there was no time for him to think about it. Serene Ding was immediately taken out from the space, and he didn't have any extra movements. The beast's mouth in the light made a strange sound, and the 7-colored brilliance turned into a strange beast. It rushed out of the altar, and the beast was Serene Ding was in Xiaohua. Its aggressive aura made Xiaohua couldn't help but take 3 steps back. Roar! Serene Ding fell into the beast's mouth, and the 7-colored brilliance of the strange beast disappeared in a flash. When the strange beast returned, Serene Ding was exactly where it was before. Buzz, buzz, buzz! Serene Ding fell, and the whole cauldron trembled violently. Waves of obscure fluctuations rushed towards the altar. Wherever the fluctuations passed, all the images and totems turned into fragments, and crashed into the altar along with the fluctuations. Swoosh! The altar collapsed with a loud rumble, and the 7-colored brilliance also shattered. An aura that seemed to be able to destroy the heaven and earth gushed out from these fragments. All of the fragments transformed into a powerful current that rushed towards Xiaohua. Metal escape technique. Xiaohua remembered clearly that the metal escape technique was the method to enter the legacy world. He immediately urged the metal escape technique to rush head-on into the torrent. Boom! Like a swimming fish, Xiaohua only felt countless grotesque illusions appear in front of his eyes. His entire body once again moved against the flow of these illusions. When he reached the altar, a vague barrier blocked in front of Xiaohua. As Xiaohua exerted all his strength to activate his magic power, Xiaohua's body passed through the barrier with some difficulty. Immediately, a powerful pressure fell from all directions, and a familiar feeling appeared in Xiaohua's heart. Shortly after, the silver-white brilliance turned into a revolving passage, and Xiaohua's body rapidly passed through this passage. The passage was extremely long, and also seemed to be extremely short. In a moment, Xiaohua's eyes were dazzled by a glaring light. He couldn't help but slightly close his eyes. The moment he closed his eyes, his body stopped. When Xiaohua opened his eyes, a familiar feeling emerged from the bottom of his heart. Regardless of whether it was the scene before his eyes or the aura that filled the space. Raising his head, Xiaohua saw clearly that the entire sky was illuminated by 9 suns. It was extremely similar to the sky in his space, but the difference was that on the other side of the 9 suns, there were unexpectedly 10 moons. Moreover, the moons were several times larger than the suns. What was special was that the sky was densely packed with many stars. From the sun star, the moon star, and countless other stars, huge pillars of stars fell down. These huge pillars of stars covered the entire space, and the aura of desolation and the feeling of desolation were all emitted from these pillars of stars. The power of the stars and the moon! In an instant, Xiaohua cried out in surprise. I understand now. This is the power of the stars and the moon. In addition to the spiritual energy of heaven and earth used by the cultivators of my Taoism, and the awe-inspiring energy used by the scholars of Confucianism, the demon race of this world actually uses the power of the stars and the moon. Thinking of this, Xiaohua waved his hand and took out the 2 bones with mysterious talismans from the space. Sure enough, the talismans glowed under the power of the stars and the moon, and 2 powerful auras emerged from the talismans. Putting away the bones, Xiaohua released his divine sense. Wherever his divine sense passed, the scene within 1,000 miles fell into Xiaohua's mind bit by bit. It was a huge tree, a huge rock, a mountain peak, and a wilderness. It was exactly the same as the murals on the walls of the space where the altar was previously. Boom! Just as Xiaohua was exploring, a powerful vibration came from the top of his head. Xiaohua's figure flashed, and just as he dodged, a huge seeing cauldron fell from the sky, landing right under Xiaohua's body. At this time, the seeing cauldron was probably 100 feet tall, and in front of it, Xiaohua looked just like an ant. Roar! Xiaohua squinted his eyes and looked at the strange runes on the seeing cauldron. With a loud roar, he used the heavenly law embodiment technique and the immortal body bestowment technique. The pillar of light from the stars and the moon turned into crystal threads visible to the naked eye and fell into Xiaohua's body. Along with the pillar of light, Xiaohua's transcendence golden body was born with a loud bang. It grew bigger by a zhang, and in just a moment, it was actually 200 feet tall. The immortal body bestowment technique is indeed the immortal body bestowment technique. Xiaohua felt that the power of the stars and the moon was even smoother than the energy of heaven and earth as it tempered his body. He couldn't help but sigh. This is a divine ability used by the immortal body bestowment technique. What it tempered was not the energy of heaven and earth, but the power of the stars and the moon. It's just that the immortal body bestowment technique is no longer the immortal body bestowment technique, and the power of the stars and the moon is no longer the power of the stars and the moon. It can only be barely replaced by the energy of heaven and earth. Come. The current Xiaohua naturally didn't know how to use the power of the stars and the moon. He could only wave his hand, and the seeing cauldron fell into his hand again. When the seeing cauldron fell into his hand, some information from the seeing cauldron entered his mind. What? Holy bloodline? What does this mean? The moment the information appeared, Xiaohua couldn't help but reveal an expression of shock. When he finished reading it, an inconceivable feeling arose in his heart. Damn it, this Xiao understands now. This so-called legacy world wasn't just a barrier jointly set up by the ancient demonic beasts for their descendants. In this barrier, the purest bloodline of the ancient demonic beasts was preserved, allowing their descendants who had lost their bloodline to come here to find their bloodline and pass on the glory of the demonic beast race. Furthermore, in this barrier, they used the bloodline of the 10,000 races to carry out a plan that spanned hundreds of millions of years. They wanted to give birth to the holy bloodline that the demonic beast race had never had before, a bloodline that could surpass the 10,000 races and 10,000 saints of the demonic beast race. This is too crazy, too inconceivable. Thinking up to here, Xiaohua looked towards another direction with a strange expression, and shock appeared in his eyes. How is this possible? How do I know the location of the holy bloodline? I found out from the Seeing Cauldron that the location of the bloodline of the Yu family in Fallen Gold Mountain is normal. The Seeing Cauldron didn't have any information about the location of the Holy Bloodline. How do I know? Moreover, I just entered this legacy realm. Although I have seen all the scenery on the murals outside, it's normal for me to feel a sense of familiarity. But this kind of desolate aura, how can I be familiar with it? Could it be that I've been to the legacy realm before? Or perhaps this memory came from Little White? A series of questions naturally arose from the bottom of Xiaohua's heart, leaving him at a loss. What should I do now? Xiaohua put away the Seeing Cauldron and looked at the two directions with some hesitation. He didn't know where he should go. Roar! Before Xiaohua could make a decision, an ear-piercing cry sounded. A bird that was several hundred feet in size flapped its wings and descended from the sky. Its sharp beak, which was several hundred feet in size, pierced towards Xiaohua's chest. In midair, wherever the beak passed, cracks appeared in the void, and a ferocious killing intent that seemed to have materialized penetrated Xiaohua's golden body. Damn it! Seeing that the thin, fleshy wings of the bird were covered with talismans and countless beams of starlight and moonlight rushed into these talismans, how could Xiaohua not know the power of this bird's attack? He roared and took out the wishful staff. Grow, 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 grow. At the same time, Xiaohua released the godly power centipede. In an instant, the wishful staff turned into 100 feet in size. Xiaohua's body surged with lightning, and his figure rushed into the air like lightning. The wishful staff was raised to meet the falling bird. The godly power centipede also borrowed the power of Xiaohua, and wisps of demon clouds surged around its body. Under these demon clouds, the godly power centipede's body suddenly expanded, growing to several hundred feet in size. It rushed aggressively towards the bird. -13. Chapter 3769. Boom! A loud sound came from the sky. The ferocious bird was hit back and forth in the air. Xiaohua's golden body was hit by the ferocious bird and fell to the ground. Hundreds of giant trees were broken. A towering mountain was also hit by Xiaohua's golden body and half of it collapsed. On the land that no one had set foot on for many years, a deep pit of hundreds of feet in length and dozens of feet in size was impressively visible. Although the movement of the fight was great, it was somewhat insignificant in the space of the untainted land. As for the divine power centipede, although its size had become bigger, it was still less than 100 feet away from the abdomen of the ferocious bird like lightning. It was about to wave its claws and cut into the wings of the ferocious bird, but the powerful air wave and the ferocious bird's breath suddenly knocked the divine power centipede upside down. As the saying goes, hooligans are not scary, but hooligans with culture are scary. If it was the divine power centipede, it would be, monsters are not scary, but monsters with spiritual wisdom are scary. However, when the dangerous breath arrived, the divine power centipede's body immediately shrank and curled up extremely. Not to mention that the ferocious bird's wings did not hit the divine power centipede. Even if it hit, the divine power centipede would not be hurt. Damn it! Seeing this, Xiaohua angrily cursed. He climbed up from the ground and stamped his feet. The whole earth trembled. His figure rushed into the sky again. When he took back the divine power centipede, he waved his hand again, and the seal of the sea flew out of the space and was about to hit the ferocious bird in the distance. However, when the seal of ocean overturning seal landed in midair, it didn't have the surging of 10,000 jade talismans that Xiaohua had imagined. Even the copper-colored light seemed weak. Not good! Not only can my monster not be compared to this ferocious bird, but I can't use my magic weapon! Xiaohua took out his magic weapon, and the ferocious bird also felt the danger. It spread its wings and prepared to attack again. Under the stimulation of Xiaohua's spiritual power, he immediately found that the qi of heaven and earth in this space was extremely weak. I neglected it. This is the world of the legacy created by the Monster Clan. Although it is similar to the Untainted Land, it is not the untainted land. There is only the power of the stars and the moon in this world, and there is no chi of heaven and earth. Even the chi of righteousness does not exist. This Xiaohua's Taoist and Confucian magic cannot be used. But, so what? Xiaohua raised his head and looked over. The entire legacy realm was vast and boundless, and everything was incomparably huge. Even his small and cautious heart was now fermenting like a lofty ambition that soared to the clouds. A surge of arrogance that soared to the heavens was born from Xiaohua's heart. With this Zhao's cultivation, would I still be afraid of these flat birds? Xiaohua raised his head and yelled. The muscles on his golden body rapidly overflowed. At the same time, his entire figure once again pounced forward, and at the same time, his spiritual hammer was activated. Boom, boom, boom! In the sky where the ferocious bird was flying, the invisible giant hammer let out a whimper of the wind, completely enveloping the several acres of space to the left of the ferocious bird. This hammer of divine will was extremely mysterious. That ferocious bird immediately felt a dangerous aura. Both of its wings rapidly flapped, and a powerful whirlwind rushed out from both of its wings. At the same time, the ferocious bird let out a long cry. It raised its head, and a talisman that was several jang in size rushed into the air and quickly met the hammer of divine will. Boom! A fireball that was several times stronger than Xiaohua's talisman exploded under the hammer of divine will. Woo! It was at this time that Xiaohua's wishful staff came over and hit the neck of the ferocious bird. Ayo! The ferocious bird's figure was once again hit and flipped in the air. The sharp claws that were exposed in front of Xiaohua's eyes also had traces of strange talismans. Xiaohua did not dare to neglect. When he was about to rush over again, he saw the ferocious bird suddenly let out a sad cry. It spread its wings and flew in another direction. Its speed was extremely fast. Xiaohua had just noticed that the ferocious bird had already flown 1,000 feet away. If the world's essence was abundant, Xiaohua's thunder escape technique might be able to catch up, but at this time, Xiaohua could only look at it from afar and frown. Ancient ferocious beasts are all so powerful? Xiaohua not only could not catch up, but he also did not dare to. Looking at the hot aura in the air that had not yet dissipated, he thought, let's not talk about other things. Let's talk about this ferocious bird. Its attack is not systematic. It only relies on instinct. It only uses its beak and has not used its claws or wings. Even when this ferocious bird saw Xiaohua's spiritual hammer and was hit by the wishful staff, it immediately retreated. This is obviously the meaning of cowardice. In other words, this ferocious bird is not a ferocious bird at all. It is just the most ordinary bird in this relic world. However, this lowest level bird was born with such magical powers. The talisman in its mouth is more powerful than Xiaohua's fire talisman. Fire talisman, that is a jade talisman that has been lost in the Dawn Rain continent. Unexpectedly, it was actually defeated by a bird here. I really don't know how powerful ancient demonic beasts can be. Xi Ding also did not record that there are demonic beasts in the relic world. These demonic beasts should not be originally in the relic world. Perhaps they were brought in by the descendants of the demonic beasts, or perhaps they grew in the relic world. In short, these demonic beasts should have nothing to do with the inheritance of the bloodline. They also have nothing to do with the bloodline of the Supreme Saint. Xiaohua pondered again. It's just that with these demonic beasts, it will be somewhat troublesome for Xiaohua to go to those two places. There will be a lot of demonic beasts along the way. In the end, where should I go? Or both places? If I think about it simply, Xiaohua has nothing to do with the Yu family of Fallen Gold Mountain. Even if Xiaohua obtains their bloodline, it may not be useful. Xiaohua should go directly to find the Supreme Saint's bloodline. But the problem is that it is the Supreme Saint's bloodline. Even the real ancient demonic beasts do not dare to say that they can accept the Supreme Saint's inheritance. How can Xiaohua, a human, dare to say that he can accept it? If Xiaohua only wants to find the inheritance of the Yu family of Fallen Gold Mountain, then what about the memories in Xiaohua's mind? Who knows, maybe Xiaohua will be able to find his own origin in the location of the Supreme Saint's bloodline. Of course, if I can get the bloodline of the Yu family of Fallen Gold Mountain, even if I can play with it for myself, wouldn't it be better than leaving it to their descendants? Xiaohua thought and thought, then began to think dirty again. It's a pity that Xiaohua only has Si Yingding as a keepsake. If I have other keepsakes, maybe I can help Fairy Hong Xia and Huang Mingxiang find their ancient bloodline. Forget it, I'll look for the Supreme Saint's bloodline first. Things that harm others without benefiting myself should be left for last. After thinking, Xiaohua withdrew his golden avatar and very carefully released his soul sense. He even used the soul cultivator's flying technique to fly at a low altitude. Although Xiaohua had already deliberately lowered his altitude to fly, he had only just flown 1,000 feet when a killing intent several times stronger than the previous flying bird quickly rushed over from a direction. Xiaohua hurriedly swept his soul sense in that direction, only to see a several hundred feet large dauntless bird, with its wings spread open, practically covering the sky as it flew towards him. Granny, I'm afraid it's at the 6th or 7th level of elemental energy. Xiaohua immediately understood that the vicious bird just now wasn't afraid of him, but was scared away by the dauntless bird. Moreover, seeing that the dauntless bird's body was much stronger than the previous vicious bird, and its pair of fleshy wings were even more robust, how could Xiaohua not know that this dauntless bird was even more powerful? Xiaohua cursed in his heart, and hurriedly used his wind escape technique to fly in the direction of the vicious bird from before. Who didn't know how to use the tiger's might to intimidate others? Who knows, he might even be able to pull off a disaster. Xiaohua's wind escape technique had actually been cultivated to an extremely high level within the rockfall matrix. When he flew, it was like a cool breeze passing through a mountain, without a trace, extremely miraculous. However, this wind escape technique was somewhat lacking when compared to the dauntless bird's wings. But seeing the dauntless bird spread its wings, it instantly traveled several tens of li, its enormous body not the slightest bit clumsy. Seeing this, how could Xiaohua still dare to have any other misgivings? What magic power consumption, what insufficient elemental energy of heaven and earth, what too big of a movement, he didn't even bother to think about it. Lightning surged around his body, and the leaping thunder realm technique was used, and like a whirlwind, he flew into the distance. The sound of thunder resounded, and that dauntless bird was clearly frightened, somewhat afraid of the lightning around Xiaohua's body. But in the dauntless bird's moment of hesitation, Xiaohua's figure had already disappeared. Caw! The dauntless bird let out a long cry, spreading its wings and flying away, seemingly no longer paying attention to Xiaohua. And when Xiaohua's released soul sense saw the dauntless bird fly away, his heart was greatly relieved. Just as he was about to take a breather, roar! Ayo! Dozens of cries came from within 100 li. Xiaohua's soul sense swept out, and his complexion instantly became deathly pale. He saw from behind giant rocks, giant peaks, and giant trees, monstrous beasts several hundred jiang in size emerged. Each and every one of these monstrous beasts had a robust physique, and their appearances were all different. Some were rapidly crawling on the ground, some were riding on monstrous clouds and rushing into the air, some were spreading their wings and flying out. Their eyes, which were larger than ordinary people's, were filled with greed and savagery, and their target was precisely the dazed Xiaohua who was standing in midair. At this moment, Xiaohua was like a little wife who had been bullied, his face full of grievances. That's right, didn't I just use the lightning escape technique? Did it have to be like this? Dozens of savage auras rushed over from all directions, sweeping back and forth within 100 jiang of Xiaohua's body. Although they weren't elemental thoughts, they were more sensitive than elemental thoughts. Xiaohua didn't dare to stay any longer, and he used the wind escape technique to descend to the ground. After all, he could use the earth escape technique in the mountain rocks, and he could use the wood escape technique in the giant trees, which was much stronger than the lightning escape technique. Ayo ayo! Xiaohua had just landed, when bursts of roars came from the sky. Xiaohua only had time to turn his head to take a look, but he saw that most of the dozens of giant beasts were already tearing at each other, and only a small portion of the strange beasts were chasing after him. Immediately, Xiaohua used the wood escape technique and disappeared into the giant trees. Hiss hiss! The giant beasts descended, and a few of them sniffed at the side for a moment before swaggering away. There were also 2 that chased after Xiaohua's escape route. Boom, boom, boom! One by one, the giant trees were knocked flying by these giant beasts. Wood shavings splashed everywhere, and gravel danced in the air. The strange beasts that were hiding in the giant trees were also blasted out. 13. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.